cable modem and my router and my computer.
Rick Adams is calling. There's Simon the Madman.
There's
How
Simon.
are you, Simon?
Nice, Simon. Real nice.
Put your best face forward.
Oh, then I have to put up a black screen just a sec.
Oh, jeez.
Curtis, you're not supposed to mention you're blocking him.
Oh, please don't tell me I
Well, that's to
closed
block my screen, my face.
Please
So
don't
then you-
tell
There
me.
we are.
Bill Noble's calling again. Bill, are you back? All right, so we're live, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to CoCoTALK number, is it 16 now? It's hard to keep up with this. So, and Rick Adams, pleasure to have you back, sir. And,
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, good.
Hey, Rick,
Yeah.
is your new laptop working well?
We're working on it. 4 billion things to install.
Yeah, yeah.
Get it just how you like it.
Going through that right now too on my PC. Yeah, so we're back, week number 16. It's hard to believe that we've been doing this for 16 weeks now. And every week I always wonder, are we going to run out of things to talk about? And lucky for us, that doesn't seem to happen. And it seems like each week we end up getting sometimes new people, like we have today on our call. Kind of our guest of honor today is going to be Jay Searle. How are you, Jay?
I'm good. How's everybody?
Good, good, good. So Jay is going to be our primary presenter today, and one of the things that Jay is going to talk about is MessUI and some of the cool things you can do specifically with the MessUI or the MAME UI for CoCo stuff. So we've been looking at MAME, and we've been talking about MAME. And so when we say MAME and we say MESS, at this point we're really talking about the same thing, although you can create your own custom strain if you want to. But right now, if you download the latest version of MAME, MAME and MESS are a combined product, and they can be used to run arcade machines, retro computers, and retro consoles. And so it's a one-stop shop for vintage emulation. We've been talking about this a lot. It's really become a lot more interesting to a lot more people since we started with the speech sound pack emulation. Those who are into doing assembly programming probably appreciate the debugger. And as nice as MAME is, there are some things about MAME that make it somewhat awkward to use. And so hopefully some of the tips and tricks and tweaks that Jay is going to show us will make MAME with the UI a little bit more user-friendly. And then on top of that, Jay was also going to show us some debugging stuff too, which might be of interest to, again, those who especially are doing assembly programming. So that's going to be our main presentation today. So thanks, Jay, for volunteering to do that with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Much appreciated. My other cast of characters, my bevy of beauties, is none other than L. Curtis Boyle and Richard Cavell and Mark Overholser and Simon Jonassen and David Ladd and Bill Noble and Rick Adams. Thank you all for being here. I can't thank you enough for always joining us and giving us something to talk about and being part of the show. Much appreciated.
You can thank us by paying us more.
Yeah, really.
Remind me to double what I'm paying you now.
Oh, so the same raise we got last time. Sounds
yes,
good.
yes. And right now, according to the internet, we have 9 people watching us live right now, so that's kind of cool. And yeah, so what's been going on in your worlds this week, everybody? What have you done this week? What's been interesting? It doesn't even have to be retro related, but if it is retro related, that's even the better. So who's got a story they want to share on
I do.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, that CoCo I got shipped off a couple weeks ago, and it finally arrived in Italy with Matteo, and he actually posted it on the CoCo group on Facebook.
Yeah.
So he's all excited. So we're working on for interactive fiction contest. So we're working on something. So anyway, let's see. Beyond that, oh yes, I joined your realm, and we've laid a lot of rail.
Yes, I've noticed that. Yeah, I'm switching over right now to the Facebook group, and so let's see if we can find Matteo's picture. We will talk about Facebook later on too. And it looks like Bruce Moore has just here it is. So here's Matteo showing off some of his pictures. So you talked about this last week, Mark, how you had cleaned this up for him 2 weeks ago, was it? And so this is now, and he's in Italy?
Yeah, Venice.
Venice, okay. So this is his CoCo connected to a television, and this is what you sent him. So what exactly did you say you did? You upgraded it to 64K?
Yeah, it had 64K, and yeah, it's a socketed CPU, so I put in a 6309, sent him the original processor and the original RAM, but also upgraded to 64K.
Very nice, very nice.
Did it have extended basic already, or?
Yeah, I did. I had extended basic already. Yeah, it was nice. Multi-key keyboard. The extended basic.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a nice little CoCo 2 now.
John Mark Mobley has joined us. Hey, John, from the Glenside Color Computer Club. Pleasure to have you. John, if you're able to add me on Skype and you want to call in Skype, we'd love to have you as part of the call as well. John, I know last week we showed off the newsletter, which was phenomenal. And I finished listening to last week's podcast, so John was featured on the podcast. It was great to hear him there on the show. Yeah, so that's cool, Mark. Thanks for doing that. And it's really nice when we can do things for members of the community and help each other out. So that was kind of cool.
Yep.
And it was nice to hear about it on the talk and then see the final, outcome on Facebook when it arrives and people post their pictures,
Yep.
And Grant just mentioned in the chat that he got his CoCo 3 yesterday, and it's up and running too. So
there we go, Grant. Feel free to call us in on Skype if you'd like, Grant. Yeah, I actually sent that to Grant, and so he got that up and running, and that's cool. That was part of my haul since I have like a spare CoCo 3 or 2, trying to do some friends and family deals to keep us off of eBay, extortion and
your addiction.
And you're kind of playing Russian roulette when you buy it, if it's even going to work sometimes. So that was cool. That's great to hear. It's nothing more exciting than, hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
Was it a 128 or a 639?
Yeah, it's a stock 128.
Stock 128?
Yeah. I have one that does have 512, but I can't get it to power on, and I don't have time to troubleshoot it right now. So that'll be maybe we'll do a hardware segment at some point in time, and we'll try to do a live diagnostic and repair of a CoCo. It's like playing the game Operation. As long as the light doesn't go off and nothing buzzes, then. Anybody else have anything to share on what their week has been like in the real world or in the retro world?
I've just been swamped with work. I'm in rush season now officially, so I killed off 5 jobs this week, and I'm back up to 12 already for the weekend. So not a lot of CoCo stuff going on.
You're losing the.
Sorry?
You're losing the battle.
Well, my work's seasonal. It's really busy for about 6 months a year in 2 chunks of about 3 months, and then it's not too bad at all the other 6 months. And this just happens to be I'm in the busy season. So
Right.
I know Rick was on vacation. We got to see a lot of Rick's world traveling adventures on Facebook.
Yep. It's the first time I'd seen any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yellowstone and Mount Rushmore. Yep, never seen that before.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I was just down there myself just a couple of years ago, so it was kind of nice. You went in better time. I went in winter.
Yeah. And then I came back, and then I promptly killed my laptop, so I had to replace that.
It's interesting, some of the offline discussions that we have when we're not doing a CoCo Talk. The things we hear and see sometimes, and the death of the laptop saga as it unveiled. Nicole's watching us in the live chat. Hello, Nicole. How are you? Alan Zeiser is here. Hello, Alan. Alexander Wallace is here. Hi, Alexander. Hello, everybody who's watching us live. We appreciate you being here. Cool stuff. Yeah, so when we went to do, by the way, last week's show, I really enjoyed the Pac-Man transcode, seeing the game and hearing all about that. Trying to get ready for that show is when I discovered that my analog capture stuff wasn't working anymore, and somehow, I had recently reformatted my computer to Windows 10, and at some point in time something went sideways and none of my analog capture devices work, so I had to re-nuke my computer again. So I think I did that on Monday this week, and it's been a slow process getting all my software reinstalled and all your. It's a project to get a PC back to where it was. You can spend a while getting everything set up, and then when you got to start over, it's a project.
Yep.
Did you reinstall Windows 7?
No. I just reinstalled Windows 10 again because, well, for better or for worse, Windows 10 has some other features that I like that ties me into my Xbox and things like that. So,
what's that? Cortana?
No, it's just there's an Xbox app that lets me actually stream my Xbox from the living room to my PC. So whenever I play Xbox and I do YouTube videos from my Xbox, I actually stream it to my PC and then stream my PC to the internet. So I can actually leave my Xbox in another room.
I just find Windows 10 a bit bloated at the end of the day, and if you're doing a lot of stuff in DOS prompt, well, there literally is no DOS prompt.
Right. Well, yeah. So that's been my struggle this week is getting my computer back to where it used to work, and I think we're finally there now. So, and of course, 4th of July. Everybody have a good 4th of July.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a great 1st of July.
1st of July.
How does that work?
Canada's 150th birthday. So
yeah.
The big.
That's cool. How we celebrate our rebellion and treason from the
Happy Treason Day. I did see that on Facebook.
Happy British Rebellion Day. So it's a great day.
Ungrateful Yanks. No.
Nothing's more American than using Chinese fireworks to celebrate your independence, because America. So. And Jay, since you're new to the call, why don't you tell us a little bit about your CoCo history, what you've done in the past, if anything, and then what kind of projects you're working on now, and what got you inspired to want to share this with us today.
I guess I'm pretty much like anybody. I guess our general age. I had a CoCo 2 16 kilobyte when I was, I'm going to say, about 14 maybe, and never really did much more than basic with it back then. As most of you probably are aware, there it was not easy to get information on assembly or how it worked or how to do it, and the cart to do it and all that kind of stuff. So I never really got into it back then, and then kind of moved on to Windows like everybody else, and PCs and such. And then I kind of went away from the CoCo stuff for a long time. Finally started collecting about a year ago. Different hardware. I have all kinds of stuff, a bunch of CoCo stuff, Apple II stuff, Commodore 64, 128s, Apple II GSs, all kinds of stuff I've collected, and related hardware. I'm sure most of us have, but
Yep.
So anyway, I actually started using the CoCo again once I had gotten one, and kind of just looking around on the internet. I knew about assembly, was kind of looking at that and kind of figuring all that out, and I stumbled upon. I can't remember exactly if it was your stuff you were doing. I think there was something before that maybe that I was kind of watching that kind of got me thinking about it again. I've been watching your talks probably for about a month now, maybe month and a half. Actually watching, sitting down and watching it versus just kind of checking in here and there like you do with some things. And so that's pretty much the story. I guess as far as projects go, this week I was working most of the week night shifts, so I'm turning around from that for next week. But got everything going, I believe, for the presentation today. That was what my project for the week was pretty much. And I'm also working on a Java-based, basically a sprite creator that hopefully I can get to work that would be able to allow you to draw a sprite in a defined pixel size that you might want to draw one in, and then have it export the necessary assembly code to be able to put that into a program to be able to draw it in a given graphics mode. So working on that. That's going, actually you haven't got it real far in that, mostly a UI and a little bit of code to tie everything together. But and then the other project I'm thinking about, which is a long probably project that's going to take me a while to even figure out where I'm going, but I'm thinking about working on a Williams arcade I won't call it a transcode because they're already 6809, but I guess a port maybe be the best word to the CoCo. But like I said, that's something that's kind of a dream right now. I'm just thinking about it and trying to kind of get my head around what would even be required to do that. So
neat.
That's where I'm at the moment, though.
Very cool. Well, anytime you want to take over and share your screen and start showing us what you want to show us, I think we've done a nice little warm-up introduction right now. So if you want to go ahead and take it away,
okay,
feel free to.
See, figure out which one I want to share here. You guys, which one you guys get? Let's see. I think I got the wrong one. Hang on.
I see the Windows flag of treason.
Treason.
That's an awfully ugly Mac logo.
So, do you guys have a blank screen or a desktop?
Yes, we have a blank. We have a blank screen right now.
I have 2 monitors, and this thing is
on the wrong virtual one.
What's that?
On the wrong virtual one.
Yeah, I see that. Let's try that. How about that?
There we go. We got
Excellent.
lots of pretty icons.
There we go. That's what I was looking for. So, so basically, what I thought I'd do is, there we go. So, basically, what I'm going to do today is basically just if everybody doesn't know, there's a MessUI and there's also a MAME UI. So Steve was talking earlier about MAME being a unified system now, which is true as far as the code that comes actually from the MAME development itself. But there is a MessUI and there's also a MAME UI, and they are split between computers and arcade hardware, essentially. The MessUI is specifically around for computers, and it's also updated. It's currently 187 MAME and 187 MessUI. The MAME UI I played with a little bit just to because I was messing around with the Williams arcade hardware just to see how it worked, and that is not as up to date. So there's potential that you could have some feature lag or whatever if you were trying to use that. But in any case, we're going to be using the MessUI here today. So I just have on my browser here, just for people, if they're wondering where we go to get these things. This is mamedev.org. This is the official MAME, place to go and get MAME things. I'm using Windows. I know it's the cringe of some of you, but I've been Windows forever, so that's pretty much. I tried going to Linux, and it's like trying to learn DOS again. So I
was just joking about that myself. I use all of them. So
okay, yeah, I know a lot of people are hard. I work with a lot of people that are diehard Linux people, and I'm just like, man, it's like learning another language again, So I really haven't dove into it yet. But anyway, you get onto here. I'm not going to download them again because I already have them. But obviously, you're going to 32-bit or 64-bit, and there's other. Like I said, it's supported on all the major platforms, so you can get that. Go over to MessUI.
What's the link? What's the link for MessUI? I want you to copy and paste that into Skype chat, and I'll put it into the YouTube chat.
You're way beyond my knowledge level, Steve. You want me to go paste this?
Copy
and paste into
Skype. So Control C is copy.
Mm-hmm. I got that. Thanks.
I'm not going to tell you what control paste is, though. You're going to have to Google that.
You don't just hit right-click and then click.
Did that go in?
Copy?
Hey, as long as it's not focused on me.
Yeah, I'm deflecting some of your pain right now. I don't know if that went in or not, Steve. Let me know if that goes up. Okay, good.
I got it, and I'll put it in the YouTube chat.
Excellent. So this is the MessUI page. If you type MessUI into Google, it's the first thing that pops up, so you can obviously Google it and get it that way. But anyway, you come down here. It's going to tell you that if you want to download the MessUI, you obviously want to have Mess first because it's useless with just the front end. So you want to get your most current. Right now, the 187 is the most current, and obviously you want to get your 64, 32-bit preferred, depending on what you were using. Now, the other thing to mention here is you won't see any Linux or Mac stuff because this is Windows only. So if you're not using a Windows machine, this will not be of use. The rest of this piece. So, so anyway, you want to get your MESS, you want to get your MessUI link, which is this guy here, and this one me. And like I said, I'm not going to download them again because I already have them.
Right, can I ask you a quick dumb question?
Sure, go ahead.
If you download the MessUI, does that already also have the MESS binary included with it, or does it have to be coupled with the binary you download from the MAME dev site?
I'm going to get in. You'll see that when I get into the more of the actual interesting part of the presentation. But yeah, you need to have both. But the MessUI will basically gets pushed into the MESS folder, if you want to call it that, and it works out of there. So, and it knows when you put it in there, it can find all the MESS stuff and knows where everything is. So it's pretty neat that way. There is a page here on setting up MessUI. You can go through that and do it, but it's not much beyond the standard MESS setup that you'll find to make your configuration file, set up some stuff in the ini file. And I'll show where all that is in the folder, but this is all pretty standard stuff to do for setting up MESS that you'll find anywhere. The only specific thing to MessUI ini, which I'll show you guys when we get there as well, has you verify this column order is the right order and that there's no duplicates. Otherwise, it screws up the way the presentation of the screen is. So you'll see that as well. I also have the Color Computer Archive, which I'm sure all you guys are aware of. I just wanted to go here and show people where there's some stuff here. Obviously, there's ROMs. If you're going to use ROMs for MESS, you want to use the MESS ROMs because I found if you don't, your mileage is going to vary as far as where they're going to get anywhere. But today I'm going to be using a CoCo 3 ROM. I have pretty much most of these CoCos except for the PAL stuff, obviously, but I'm going to use the CoCo 3 today just because it's the simplest one I just decided to set up. And also, if you don't have a real good Notepad program, I'd recommend you get something like Notepad++. I believe that's for Windows only also. I'm not 100% certain on that, but if you're on Windows, I really like it. And it actually has the ability to work as a integrated development environment if you want to set it up that way. And I was thinking about doing that for assembly, but I haven't gotten that far as well. Another little pipe dream. But anyway, so that's the basic places where everything is. Oh, I also went into the archive and I got Sockmaster's Donkey Kong, which I'll show later just so we can show I'm not blowing smoke that all this does actually work. So so that's that. Like I said, if you do the MAME, it's a 7-zip file. It's going to be basically it's a self-extracting, so you don't even need a 7Z file extractor. It does its own thing. But when you do that, it's going to ask you for a location, and I always put most of my stuff in the desktop. It's just the way I've always been. So you'll get a MAME folder. When you go in there, you'll see that
I think we lost your screen share.
Okay, stand by.
Nick Marentes is joining us in chat. Join us on Skype too, Nick. Nick says, why do they call it MessUI when it actually runs under MAME?
Yeah, well, that's because if you read the history in there, not to get too belabored with it, but it's called MessUI because it used to be when MESS and MAME were split, that was the UI for MESS, and then there was the MAME UI, was the UI for MAME. When they combined, basically, the MessUI used to be part of MESS. Like if you downloaded MESS, you got the UI with it. Well, then when they decided to do their own, the UI that exists now for MAME that you can get into using Tab or whatever it is, I think, they split out the MessUI project, and now that project's being managed separately from the main software. So that's why they're separated like that.
Okay.
So anyway, we get into here. You'll see this is the general. When you get MAME, you do that file unloading. You're going to get this directory wherever you decide to put it. Then what you'll do is you'll go into MessUI, and when you go into MessUI, this is simply just a MessUI 64exe. That is the only file in here. So it's not an install. It's not anything like that. It's just an actual file. So what you'll do is, like you'll see, if I can move this without turning you guys off again, put him down there. You'll see in here there's a MessUI 64. That's the application. And it does everything from the application that it needs to do. So, so what I want to do, just so everybody can kind of see where this goes, I'm going to make another MAME directory here. because all this MAME that I have in here, I played with this morning to make sure I had everything working the way I wanted it to. So I'm going to do this again fresh because there's a couple of things that are worth seeing if you're starting out with a brand new depository. So there's the MAME 2. Like I said, you get your standard brunt of files. Get the MessUI, drag him out here, get him uncompress, and then you'll just open up here and put him inside of your MAME. Oh, I think
you dragged it on top of a program. Just drag it into the white space. It should work.
There we go. See, Steve, you are a genius. I knew this. All right, so MessUI. So when you open up MessUI 64, I wonder why it's not letting me do that.
Because Windows.
Yeah.
Because what? Because you guys are watching. Yeah, exactly.
Because Windows, yeah.
Huh.
Nick, you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Good eye, Nick.
Good eye.
That amazes me that it just set up on my other one, but won't do it here. Oh, you know what? It might be. I might have not got the decompressed version of it, but it looks like I did. Let me try that one more time just to make sure I didn't screw that up.
So you're trying to extract. So the MessUI executable is a separate file from MAME. So when you install MAME, you have to drag this into the same folder that MAME is in.
That's right. And for whatever reason right now, it does not want to let me, cannot access. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's giving me that. Well, that's why I made up this other
one. Go to the one that works.
So this guy here, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to try to figure that out and get back to you guys why that's not working. That seems not right to me. Maybe, I don't know if it has something to do with the screen sharing we're doing, or that's the only thing that's really different between now and this morning. But in any case, let's see if it will open this one up. Yep. All right, so this is the main UI when you get into it, and basically you can see here you got your choice of pretty much every system that they have available. So what I want to show is a lot of people have issues with, like, or I've heard, read on the internet and stuff, like, how do you know what ROMs I need, what computer takes what ROMs, and how do I know what I got to get? So the easy way to figure that out, and with the computers it's a little bit more simpler than some of the game machines, but if you fire up one that doesn't have the ROMs you need, it tells you, as you can see right in the middle of the screen, exactly what ROMs you need, what they need to be called, and tells you where it tried to find them, which are the typical places it will look for that emulator. So if you're like, man, what do I need for my CoCo 2 Enhanced? Well, if you fire up CoCo 2 Enhanced in here, the 2B, you're going to end up, it's going to tell you exactly what you need for that to work. So when you get into the actual, this one here, I was going to show the actual ROM activation, but I can't do it. Well, I can do it, but not with the way that other one does it. It'll work for me. So in any case, if you go into your MAME folder, you'll see there's a ROMs subfolder. And if you open that up, this is where I put that CoCo 3 zip doc that I downloaded from Color Computer Archive. You don't have to unzip it. You don't have to do anything with it. You just drop it into ROMs.
Right. Let me interrupt you there real quick for just a second, Jay, because we had this conversation just a little bit before the call. I was talking to Richard, Cavell, and Simon, and I think some people are doing this differently. So I'm going to share. I'm not the expert here, but we have like a few people who are a little bit more knowledgeable here. All I've ever done is take the zip files, like you're showing here, CoCo 3 zip, and then CoCo 2 zip, and I got them from the same place. I got them from the Color Computer Archive. Yeah. Now, some people have put files in here that are actually .rom files, like the disk 11 ROM and the.
Yep. You can do that as well. It will do either way. But if you read the and if there's anybody that's more knowledgeable on this than I am, please chime in. But if you read the actual MAME documentation, it tells you that it recommends that you put it zipped into this ROM folder. They recommend doing it that way.
So MAME would prefer your ROM folder to contain the zip file of the entire machine.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I would say that the software really cares, but I think from a organization point of view, I think they're saying, hey, just leave it in a zip file. That way, it's all there. You don't have to worry about your files getting mixed up or moved or whatever. So, I don't think the because like I said, if you go into here, you're gonna have all the files in there that you would expect, and you could copy and paste these out into ROMs, and it would still work. But
okay, so it does read them if they're there.
Correct.
Okay,
but
I've never done it that way. So I've only done it this way, where I've had just a CoCo 3 zip file.
Right, yeah, and I think, like I said, I don't think the program itself cares. I think they just recommend doing it this way from an organization and cleanliness of your folders perspective.
Okay.
But
gotcha. It also helps if you want to have specific ROM sets, like if you want an extended basic 1.1 with a color basic 1.2. If it's all in the zip, you're getting, you know what you're getting. Whereas if you have multiple versions, I don't know if it might get confused.
Yes, absolutely.
The other way. I've just done it the other way, you know. But again.
Yeah, so apparently there's not really a right or wrong way. The software will let it go. I only know the way that I have done. So it's nice to know that it's not a fluke or a custom thing that works different ways for different people. It's just the process we've chosen in the past. But it seems like the program will let us go either way.
Yeah, it will. And when I started first playing with this, I was unzipping them and putting them into the ROMs folder because I didn't really know any better. And it does work. And I always done that just because, you know, Windows, you unzip everything. So, but then I had read the documentation a little bit, and I kind of, like I said, fell across that small piece of it where it says, hey, just put the zips in there, and it keeps everything, you know, more tidy. So it does work both ways.
Roger that.
So anyways, you put your ROMs in here for, you know, whatever you want, right, for the computer of choice. When you do that, in the main MessUI, you'll see right now I don't have this red circle with the slash, which basically any of these that have that red circle with slash means the program doesn't know that you have the ROMs to run that. So like you saw when I pressed Color Computer 2 and tried to open it, it told me, hey, you don't have these ROMs, these are the ROMs you need, and then it bailed out. So basically, once you install new ROMs, MessUI is like a post-processing sort of program, I guess is the best word. So it doesn't know anything until you refresh it, whether that is either through closing it or there's actually a view refresh. And when you see my green bar down the bottom, and it's looking through basically all the ROMs that I have and pairing them up with the appropriate emulator. And right now all I have is the Color Computer one, so that's the only one that really changed. But if I had more, you'd see these reds going away, just like this one is here.
Right. Well, let me ask you another dumb question too. So
sure.
On the left of this too, you usually have categories like working and available. If you just switched over from all ROMs to like working or available, would that give you the short list of what your system's configured for? It
absolutely would. Yeah, and now as you can see, there's a lot of them here you actually get without any kind of real download. So, but yes, it will. This shows me basically everything that it sees I have anything for that it recognizes. So yeah, you can do that as well.
What I've done in the past with MAME is I've taken all my CoCo ones and I just favorited them. Is that a word? Favorited? Anyway,
yeah,
I clicked on the star. Let me simplify that, right? So I clicked on the little star, and then I went to favorites, and I just had my CoCos and favorites, so I didn't have.
You're talking in the actual MAME UI.
In the MAME UI, yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I don't really worry about that because, like I said, I use this UI and it's simple enough. But you can, I believe, add your own folder and put ones in there. But I haven't actually bothered with that because it's easy enough for me to find what I'm looking for.
Right.
But so, anyways, you go into the we'll go into Color Computer 3. The first things you got to do, like I showed when I tried to open the CoCo 2, you saw it opened up full screen. You weren't able to see it because I couldn't do anything with it because there's no ROMs, but it would have captured my mouse. It's not a real great experience if you go into it default. So what you'll do, and if you notice here also, this is something that I noticed. You see there's properties and then properties for CoCo 3 CCP, or CPP, I should say. So if you go back to the main Color Computer list, you'll see there's a bunch of them that use CoCo 3 versus CoCo 1, 2. So if you go into the properties for CoCo 3, you're adjusting those properties for all the emulators that use the CoCo3.cpp, which means, and it's like an avalanche. So if you do CoCo3.cpp or CPP and set up properties there, and then you go into your specific color computer that uses that file and change properties, those properties for that specific computer will override the ones in the CoCo3.cpp. So it's kind of like an avalanche of settings that you can go into there.
So it's not kind of like a family setting, like if you have a CoCo 3 and a CoCo 3H for the Hitachi 609, for example, you're changing settings for both.
Correct. Yep, that's absolutely correct. But I'm going to go into the main properties, and this is the display you'll get. And a lot of these are kind of like, yeah, this tells you what it's doing. That's nice. Audit, yeah, I haven't really played with that. I don't think there's much to do there other than if you're trying to check out a ROM. It seems like more of a really deep developer feature. In the display, the first thing you want to change, or at least I've changed because I find it too hard to operate it in with a modern computer without doing it. You want to uncheck this maximize because it will always be checked.
Do me a favor. Hold that thought for 1 second. I'm seeing here that this is showing up very, very small on the screen. So I'm trying to see what I can do to try to zoom in on this real quick because we're looking at really tiny settings.
See if I can get it. Make it any bigger. I don't think I can. No.
I'm not sure that my software is going to let me go any bigger than my screen either. So, yeah. Okay. Sorry. I tried to zoom in just a touch.
Well, yeah,
it's a very small dialog box here.
Okay. Yeah, it is. But anyways, there's a button right about here that says Start Out Maximize. You want to unclick that and tell it the one right above it says Run in Window, and that makes it much more useful in a modern Windling environment. So. There's an advanced, which there's really not much to play with on there. There's a screen tab, really not much to work with there. Sound, you can change your sampling rate if you want. I haven't really had the need for that. Get into configuration. This is where basically this will be different per emulator, but for the CoCo 3, it gives you the options of different RAM. You got basically your 128, your 512, and there's a 2 megabyte and 8 megabyte option as well. I usually just leave that on 512. And then there's a miscellaneous, and this has some of the more important ones. There's sleep when possible box is checked by default. I haven't found any reason to uncheck that. There's another one that says skip system info. That's just another page that pops up when when it starts up the emulator. I skip that because once you see it, it's really not terribly useful. And then underneath the BIOS box, and I know like you said, it's going to be hard to see because of the display, but there's another one that's very important. It says show menu. You want to check that box. That gives you a menu in the window for the emulator to adjust a lot of these settings in the emulator when it's running. So that's useful as well. The last thing you want to work on changing, you go into controller mapping, and then this will basically let you map pretty much any device that is associated with the color computer. And there's a mouse device on the bottom. And that normally will be selected to mouse. You want to select that to none, and that will stop it from capturing your mouse in the window.
Yeah, that's the problem I was having, and that's what Nick would always say. Multitasking is like I can't multitask with this because the mouse doesn't just move seamlessly outside of the window.
Right.
So
yeah.
turning that feature off fixes
correct.
that.
Yeah. If you take mouse device to none, and that will basically have it not capture your mouse. So that's the basic. I won't say basic, but that's the roster of stuff you want to change to get a good environment in your emulator. So when you just fire this up, let's see if I can get this a little bit bigger. Is that better for you guys?
Yeah.
So you'll see up top here I have a menu. That's the menu that it gave me when we checked the box for show a menu, which is useful. I let you set up slots for your basically for your disk drives here. Let you put media in all your different media spots that you can put in a CoCo. Bunch of options. Most of them here have already been set up coming in here. The only thing that's really useful here, at least I like it, is I believe if you get a partial keyboard emulation, it lets, if I'm not mistaken, well, maybe not. I might have that wrong. I already had it set up and didn't realize it. Yeah, there is a setting that you can have it map your normal keyboard to.
That's having that unchecked, I think. Or is it?
No, I tried it both ways, and it doesn't seem to be giving me the desired effect either way. Maybe. Oh, here it is. Keyboard natural.
Keyboard natural. There you go. Now you can type like a normal situation.
Yep. And then this will basically give you your normal. Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. I have a hard time because I'm doing programming in BASIC right now, and I'm using MAME.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to remember where the certain keys are. This natural keyboard certainly comes in handy sometimes to type like a normal person.
The purpose of the other keyboard is if you're trying to play like in the old CoCo 1 and 2 games where the arrow keys are on opposite sides of the keyboard, and you're trying to do it on a PCL cram down, sometimes it's much harder to play the game. So it's kind of enabling that as an option when you're going to play a game. But for typing regular stuff, definitely switch to the...
Now, it doesn't save that setting, though. You can set it to whichever one, if you set it to natural, next time you run the emulator, it's turned off.
Yeah, you're correct, Nick, and I'm not sure why it does that. I noticed the same thing. I think, and maybe Curtis is better since he knows a little bit more about the command line stuff on this. I don't know if there's a command line option to set it to natural when you if you start it from a command line. But yeah, you're right. Within the MESS UI, it does for whatever reason does not save that option.
Yeah, well, I think I know the answer, but yeah, anything you can basically the UI is giving us a GUI to all of the various commands. So yeah, there is a command. What that command is, I don't know. However, what you can do when you run MESS, you have to do it from a command prompt. If you do MessUI tac cc, that creates the ini file, and you get a MessUI ini file. Inside that ini file, there's an option to have it write changes. So you have to make your ini file, tell it to save any change that you make. And once you do that, it should work, theoretically.
See if I can figure out where my MessUI file is.
So the same thing.
Oh, you know what? Hang on. I'm in the wrong place.
If you type in MAME64-CC, it'll create the MAME64 ini. You also have to type in MessUI-CC, and it will create your
and what's the option
file
called
for MessUI. It's -cc.
I mean once you're in the MessUI ini file, what's the
something about save changes. Now, I'll see if I can pull it up on mine. Commit changes, save changes, something like that. Let me see if I can find my mini file, my ini file.
That's in the MAME ini file itself, though, not the MessUI.
Well, when you're running MessUI, you have to do it there, or maybe you have to do it in both places. I'm not sure. Full screen, current tab, show toolbar, hide folders. Where the heck did it go?
UI key. Yeah, I don't see anything here about saving. Maybe it is in the main
maybe it's in the MAME UI. Let's see. This is stuff that I just learned recently when Tim was showing us stuff, I
just saw an autosave. Is that it? No.
I saw autosave. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, though, Steve.
Write config 1. So it's core configuration option. So it's mess.ini.
Yeah, write config. I have write config turned on, and is that what you're talking about, the write config at the top?
I think so, yeah, write config.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's still not. It does write a lot of it, but for whatever reason did not save that particular item, and I'm not sure why.
Okay, write config is what it seems to be.
Yeah.
Well, then but yes. So anything you're doing in that GUI is it's just passing off the command line option for it. So the question is going to be, what's the command line to have it automatically launch with that feature?
Right, and I've been looking for it because I want to put it in my command line that I actually use outside of this, and I haven't been able to find it yet. So if anybody knows, let me know.
Okay.
But I haven't found it.
Just a side note, because I have been using MAME with Nitrous 9 a lot. There are some features with the natural keyboard layout that do not work. So like if you want shift, left, right, up, down arrows to do some of the special things with Shell Plus, the natural keyboard can't translate the arrow keys correctly.
Okay.
So basically, if you need some of the, arrow keys, you're going to have to switch off the natural to use the arrow keys correctly.
Go back to the standard keyboard. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're typing, the natural is great for that. But if you need the shift or control arrow keys, you're going to have to turn it off.
Gotcha. Right. Same thing with copying and pasting. If you want to copy and paste through the UI into the CoCo, it won't work when you're on natural. You have to be in emulated.
All right, excellent. Yeah, I knew somebody would probably have played with that. When Nick said that, I'm like, yeah, I recognize that as well. For whatever reason, it won't. And maybe it doesn't save it because of what. It's a very machine specific feature. It's not really a global emulation setting, too. Right. So I think that was the breadth I want to show here. There's one other thing. If you notice over here, you got a media view. I don't know if that's showing up too well over there, but there's a media view. This basically lets you select any type of media that you want to put in, whether if you have a cassette file you want to attach to your CoCo. There's floppy disk files that you can attach to the CoCo. This will make it available based on every time you start up that emulator, it's going to be in whichever floppy drive you attach it to. What you can also do is you can go in to one that I skipped earlier purposefully. There's a software tab here, which I know is hard for you guys to see, but basically there's a insert button. If you hit insert, it's going to allow you to pick a directory, just your normal directory picker, where you want it to look for software for the CoCo. And I had that already set up under in my main folder. Oh, let me get rid of that. And I know you guys can't read this, but it says MAME/CoCo software is where I have it directed to. And what that does for you, which is nice, if you go to software files now, it actually will, whatever you have in there that it can read and open, it will list in this box. So right now I have a CoCo disk in there, which is something I have set up for the other part. But as you can see, this is the Stockmaster's Donkey Kong, and we'll fire that up just so you guys can see this actually does work.
So as soon as you launch that software link, it basically mounts the floppy and launches the emulator.
Correct. Now the thing to remember is, if you use that window off to the side, which is kind of a nice feature in my opinion, that window off to the side, you use it out of there, it's a once and done. Now if I close out this window and I restart my color computer emulator, I will not have this disk again, because it's only, you have to select it per instance, I guess would be the best word to use. Whereas if you use the actual floppy media slot, it will always be in that slot unless you change it.
Yeah, and the floppy media slot's probably not as useful for floppy images unless you're doing development on a certain project or something. But the hard drive one is kind of handy if you're, say, running Nitrous 9 all the time.
Yeah, right.
Who does that?
And thus it begins.
And so there, so there we go. You can see that it actually does run software. So, and it does a pretty good job. This takes a while to load up, obviously, because I guess it does a bunch of decompression in the background. But so that's that. So that was the first part of what I was going to talk about. And Steve, I have some more if you want to continue on.
Yeah,
it's up to you.
Why don't we do this? Let me see if I can do something here on my screen now where I can possibly make it a little bit bigger.
Okay.
So give me just a second.
It's coming out fine on mine.
Is it even? But I just.
Can you read the text and whatever?
Yeah, every menu's clear.
I was just a little concerned of the size of the window. I mean,
yeah, it depends on the size of the screen you're watching on Skype right now, I think.
Yeah, I'm watching on a 24-inch monitor, and so I have the Skype window about 3/4 the size, and so the Donkey Kong window is actually pretty big.
Yeah. Let me just do this. I'm going to try to run MessUI on my computer, and I'm just going to try to re-summarize everything you just said here.
Okay.
Just to make sure that I understand it, too, for my own benefit. What the hell's going on with my frickin' screen right now? Hold on. Christ, I hate computers. All right, let's try this again. Let's close and reopen. All right, we're going to go in here to CoCo MAME. I'm going to go to MessUI 64. Here we go. Let me switch my thing here to show.
Yeah, Steve, I've actually brought it up on my screen, and it's pretty clear as well. I mean, I'm using a 23-inch, and I don't have any issue seeing it. So.
It might be a problem for somebody trying to watch it on their phone.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's designed for that purpose.
Yeah, I'm not sure if mine's going to look any much more better than yours, but let me just try it real quick. So right now, like I have under my color computer category, I have Color Computer 3 NTSC. I have Color Computer 3 NTSC with the 6309. Yeah. And hey, Johnny Moe is here. So if I do and so right now this is showing me the computer in the main MESS Super GUI launcher. There's a couple more columns over here to the right. One of them has got 3 tabs, which my freaking camera is now blocking. And so the tabs are software files, media view, and software items. In the media view tab, we can do things like preload a cassette, preload a cartridge, and then mount up to 4 different floppies. And currently right now, mine still remembers the Pac-Man floppy I ran from last weekend. So you could preload 4 floppies here that have them automatically mounted when you launch the game. So this media view here, before you even launch your emulator, is pretty handy. Some of the other tweaks is if you actually do a right mouse click on the machine and go to properties. And from here, there's a handful of tabs. And again, I don't think it's any much more better than mine. Okay, so it starts off in general. 3 over on the bottom is display. And you unchecked start out maximized. And you said run in a window.
Yeah, I mean, so that's my preference. Yeah,
and I believe most people would, because that way you can see the rest of your computer.
Yeah, and and just a message if there's somebody trying to figure this out and trying to get this all set up and it opens up and you're like, I can't get out of this. Just hit your well, on a Windows computer, just hit your window key and it will bring it out to your desktop. You can close it out and try again. So
Alt-Enter, I think, too, toggles it out of full screen.
Okay.
Okay, and then under Advanced, is this where we went to? Advanced is nothing.
No, there's really nothing in there.
Then under Screen,
nope, nothing in there.
Nothing here. And then where was it then? Under
Configuration.
Configuration,
I think, maybe. No, that's RAM. I'm sorry.
Configuration's where you can change amount of RAM.
Yeah, I tried the miscellaneous. I think that's you were right in the first place.
And then under miscellaneous, no, that's not it. Software.
Yeah, it is. That was it.
Okay. Under the software tab, this is where you can insert programs to be available in that middle menu. Okay.
Correct.
Under miscellaneous is a checkbox right here that says show menu. And that's what gives you the menu bar above the emulated CoCo.
Yep.
So those handful of settings there are pretty useful settings if somebody's not already used to some of those tweaks. Good deal. Thanks for sharing that with us, and hopefully somebody understands what the hell we just did.
Yeah. So that's the basic. Like, if you just want to run MESS on a Windows box with a pretty slick UI. It's not perfect, obviously, but I think it performs its purpose pretty well. It lets you do that. You can put drop games in that software file that I showed you guys, that it will come up automatically and just load a game up and play to your heart's content.
Right.
The other piece of what I want to show, if I still have my, I'm still up on you, okay. So the other piece of it is, which is for me the more compelling piece of MESS, I should say MAME, is its actual programming ability, its debug features. I've been playing with quite a bit, just learning different things, and I find it to be pretty incredible, to be honest. But so basically what I wanted to do is move into a piece on just very basic how assembly works on the emulator itself, and kind of like the tool chain I use to do that, if you want to call it that. So I'm going to close this out for now, and this as well. So if we go back to my Firefox, you'll see that, I got rid of it. Let me go back there. So there's LW Tools, which anybody that does assembly programming on the CoCo probably is well aware of, especially if you do cross-platform. But this is the LW Tools site. If you read down through here, there's it tells you how to build it from source if you want, using MingGW or CYGWin, which is for basically like Unix compilation on a Windows PC. I didn't go there because that's just not something I want to get into. But there is some other stuff you can do. There's down here, just third-party contributions. This guy has actually created some Windows compilations that are already done that you basically they're binaries. Just make sure if you get it, you get the 414, which is the newest one. Right down the list. For whatever reason, it doesn't put it on top. I'm not quite sure why. But you want to get that. That is going to be the 32-bit binary. Now, there is also a 64-bit, which is, says down here, Alan Wolf has kindly provided these 64 Win64 binaries, which is great. Problem is, if you get them, they're not up to date with the most current version of LW Tools, which is 414, so you don't get all the features that are in that. Now, the other thing you can do, which I did just to see if I could get it to work, is you can also, when you pull down the LW Tools, which is this guy here, this is basically what you download if you were to pick the 414 download line that I just showed you. You go into the Win folder here, and it actually gives you projects that you can go into Microsoft Visual Studio, open that up, and then import the files from here, which are all the C document files, and actually recompile it on your machine, which is what I did. I did it both ways just to see if there's any difference, and as far as I can tell, the 32 binaries work fine to get the most recent features, but I'm just kind of a quack like that, so I want to see if I get it to compile, and it does compile. And you can use the community 2015 version of Visual Studio for that if you want. Well, if you don't have a professional version. So anyway, so that's that. When you do that, you are going to get a folder. It's going to look something like this. This says Ming W because that's what they used to compile it when they gave it to, put it out there for us to pull down. So it's going to give you basically a bunch of the stuff I've added, but you're going to get these main tools, which here you got an image tool, which is actually not from this download. I pulled that out of MAME just because it's more convenient to have it here the way I do things, so I pulled it over here. You got the assembler, linker. I'm not sure what this object dump file does, to be honest with you, but these are your main files as far as being able to work with assembly code and moving it into the CoCo. So what I have here is basically I have an assembly file. I'm sorry, a batch file that I call a SEM. And if you look at this, this is basically a batch file. What I do with is, I'm not sure how familiar people are with Windows batch files, but it's pretty typical. I just come in here and I clear the screen. This LWASM is the LW Tools Assembler. %1 means whatever the first command line option you give the program, it's going to assign to %1. So it's kind of like a variable. So you can write that, give it an ASM extension, and these are a bunch of modifiers to tell the LW assembler what I want it to do. So basically, it's for 6809. That's there. If you put 6309, it will allow 6309 opcodes. And then you have a list and symbols, which list just gives you a listing of the assembly after it does it, and symbols gives you the listing of symbols. I also use 6800 compatibility. That way it lets me do stuff like INX instead of having to do LEAX 1,X. So it's just a little more convenient that way. Then there's an output. Again, you can see I use %1.bin to make a binary file out of it. It's going to be named the same as whatever you tell it to use as the source file. And then TAC format. LWASM does allow several formats. I think you got a RAW, DECB, and maybe a OS9 format, I believe. So %2 is just a second command line option you're going to get there. So once it assembles, it comes down here. This is what I was trying to work on the other day. I finally figured out. It's going to have an if statement. Basically tells you if the error level is not equal to 0, which means basically when a file completes, it emits an error code. Mm-hmm. If everything goes great and it's happy, it emits a 0. If it goes wrong and it's not happy, then it emits. It can be negative to positive. It depends on what version of Windows, and it gets really complicated. But NEQ0 will always search for just 0. So if it outputs a 0, it's just going to move on to the next line. If not, it says go to end of file, which basically drops it out of the batch file, which is what you want because that will allow you to see what the error was and let you go in and troubleshoot what the problem was. So Then you pull in next is the image tool, which I showed in the previous window we were in. And this basically has a syntax that you just kind of got to learn. It's you can do image tool help, and it will give you all of its syntax. But basically, there's a put command that allows you to put things onto a disk. This is the format of the disk, which is the CoCo disk format that works with all of them work with MAME, but the one specifically for the CoCo is this.
Jay,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You need to find W image tool to go on top of that. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, the problem I have with W image, well, there's two problems with it. One, it's not as easy to use in a batch file, but the second piece of it is I can't find that in the current distribution of MAME. Do you know where that is? Because I have it on my other computer, but I don't have it. I can't find it again.
I can make it available.
Okay. Yeah, I actually found it when I was first started playing with this, and I couldn't find it again. But in any case, like I said, the image tool works in the batch file much better than
image tool is very good in a batch file. Yes, definitely. I totally get that. But yep. for someone who just wants to put binaries onto a disk or make a new disk, then image tool and W image tool are, well, they go hand in hand, and it's so easy to do.
Yeah, W image tool is just basically a GUI pretty much for image tool.
Yes.
Yep. But like I said, I wanted to show that when I did this, and I could not find the file again. So yeah, if you have a way to figure out how to make that available, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll make it available straight away.
So anyway, then we go in and basically give it the path for what disk you want it to put the file on. Obviously, that disk has to exist, or it's going to give you an error. It uses the %1 variable again, tells it wants to be %1 bin, and then basically where you're going to put it. So does the error level check again, verify that image tool is happy. If not, it fails out. Then I change directly to my MAME directory on my desktop so that it knows where to find MessUI, which is the next line here. So MessUI 64, bunch of options for MessUI. Basically tells it CoCo 3 I want to use. No filtering. Fires up my debug window, which is what you want when you're doing, any type of development. Obviously, you're going to want to get to the debug menu to see what you're getting. Skip game info is kind of the same thing we're talking about. The other one doesn't give you that first show screen. Window UI active, I believe, gives you the menu. And then flop 1 is basically a call for, hey, this is the floppy I want you to use. So once again, that's the same disk that I had up here. And then when that exits, I have it change the directory back to my development directory, because otherwise you have to do it manually. So I found that out by building this thing. So in any case, when you get all that figured out so that all your directories are correct and what have you, when you go in, the way you need to do it, otherwise you won't see, as long as everything goes great, you really won't care, but if you don't do it this way, you won't see the errors, and I'll show you what I mean. So here is brought up a command prompt. For anybody to know how to do that, just search command, and it will pop up in your Windows Finder, or Windows, whatever they call it in Windows. And then you can CD, and then just grab your directory out of Windows Explorer. They'll pop it in here, and then it will change your directory for you. And then if I type asem without any kind of parameters, you're going to see it's going to puke back to me and say, hey, blank.asm is not a file. And that's right, it's not a file because I didn't give it one. But if I had just clicked asem, if you guys can see that, I'm not sure. You see the window comes up and it disappears right away. I don't know if you're getting that or not. But in any case, if you don't open it in its own command prompt window, you'll never see the error, and you'll never know why it's bailing out on you. So that's why you want to do it this way. But anyway, what we'll do is, to show you how this actually is supposed to work, we'll do a sem, and then we want to give it a file. So as you can see in my directory here, I have a colors2. And what we'll do is we'll delete this color2's bin just so you guys can see how it works. So you got colors2, and then I'm going to tell it DECB because I want to put it on the CoCo. Hit enter. Oh, colors2. Very good at checking your errors if never did batch files before. Colors2 DECB. So as you can see, I'll go back and show you what the window showed, but basically it went through my batch file. It's fired up Color Computer now in MESS, and it's giving me my debug menu to show us. Basically, this is where the first character or the first memory location where the debugger kicks in for the CoCo. So if I hit F5, it will continue on, and we'll get the typical window, and it will do its thing. But I want to go back just to show everybody what this file gives you when you do the compilation. This is your listing. This basically tells you what it saw as a listing. And then over here on this side, it's showing you, since I told it, you know, actually, I don't think I showed you guys that yet. Or maybe not very long. Let me open this up. So this is the, come on you. So this is the file that is running when I do colors too. But anyway, my purpose today is not to get into an in-depth assembly lecture, but just for a quick reference on a couple important things. You got org at memory location 4000 hex. That basically tells it that is an indicator to actually to the color computer where when you do your load M, whatever the file name is, where it's supposed to put it. Also at the bottom, very important, you have to have a starting label. And I don't know if this is, I guess it's an LW Tools assembler thing, but you gotta have a start.
If you ask Nick, it's the same deal in editor assembler.
Okay.
Yeah, a start and an end label.
Yeah, you gotta have the start.
Same with ASM under OS 9 too.
Right. I guess my the thing that I found to be odd is I can put start up here and then end down here, but if I don't say end start, it won't give me a proper binary. You have to actually use the label.
It will give you a binary, but it won't have an execute address.
Correct. Yep, absolutely. So I found that kind of interesting when I was starting to learn how to use the assembler. So anyways, that's the general file. Like I said, I'm not going to get into in-depth in what all this code does. If Steve wants to have me back at some point to do that, I'll be happy to do that. But you can see over here, org 4000. So the first memory address it gives us is 4000. And it basically shows you, hey, this code that you gave me, this is what I translated it to, and this is what memory address in the program counter it's going to execute at, or where you're going to be able to find that, which is useful for the debugger, and also just to let you know, excuse me, just let you know that it's outputting, if you're looking at the actual opcodes, the opcode you're expecting for a particular command. Hang on, let me get a drink.
I'm going to run a quick commercial while you do that.
Sounds great.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me. It's Original Gamer Stevie Stroh. And I just want to let you know that I have merchandise available at my website right down here called ogsteviestroh.com. What kind of merchandise do I have? Well, you can get yourself a DVD kind of like this. This here is my DVD from 2016. This is the CoCo Fest 25th anniversary color computer gaming DVD. What else can you get on that website? Well, you can get yourself a DVD like this. This here is my brand new DVD for 2017. This is my CoCo Fest 26th anniversary DVD featuring 13 gameplay videos and over 3 hours of, or at least maybe 2 hours of, you know, gameplay goodness. Well, for a limited time anyways, too, you can get yourself the 2017 version of Popstar Pilot on my website by going to ogsteviestroh.com. And this is the new edition that will be available for sale this year at CoCo Fest in April of 2017. You can get yourself one of these here, right here, too, from my website, ogsteviestroh.com. And you can also get yourself a really cool retro swag shirt like this that says Original Gamer. You can get the insert coin logo. You can get the I'm a Coco Nut. You can get some Atari 2600. You can get all kinds of retro images on a t-shirt or a coffee mug. It's all good stuff, and it's great merchandise, and I'd really appreciate it if you go to my website right here, ogsteviestroh.com. Click on the link for merchandise. Check out what we got. Get yourself some today. All right, people. I thought that was funny because that was the commercial I did that Mike Rowan used to sample most of my stuff to make the song Gameplay Goodness right there. I was going through my videos today and I came across that, so kind of interesting. So talk about, you guys still there? Oh, wait a second. I can't hear you because I muted Skype. Hold on one second. I can't hear you guys. Hello. Are you guys still there? Sorry, I couldn't hear you at all because I had muted Skype for a second.
Yep, we're here.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, you back, Jay?
I am. I was saying you sound very country in that commercial. I'm not sure what it is.
I do my best. and Sockmaster says I need OG Stevie Show hot sauce to exist. So we're gonna have to look for that. I actually like hot sauce. I'll be more than happy to endorse something good. So Wayne Campbell has joined us. Hey Wayne, how are you? Feel free to call us in on Skype if anybody wants to join the Skype call. And all right, so we're back, and whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay, so just want to jump back in. So we were just talking about basically what the output that it gives you from LW Assembler. So this comes down. It gives you a let me pull over here a little bit. Gives you a symbol table. Basically, just tells you what symbols it found and what addresses it's going to be at when it assembles it. So, and you can see if you go up here and look, they do match with what it says. So that's all good. So what I'll do now is, if I can figure out how to do this without losing my screen here. There, that's what I was looking for, a menu or a scroll bar. So it comes down, this putting file colors2.bin, that comes from the image tool, and then basically from there just it moves on. So if we come in, I'm going to fire this guy up again if I can remember my command. Yeah, I don't need to give it that. So we come into here and we do a F5, let it finish running. Now what I'm going to do down, this is the debugging window for MESS, or MAME I should say, although it does call it the MESS debugger. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to put a watch point. WP stands for watch point. I'm going to give it a memory address, which is 4000. And then I believe it's, if it reads it, is it a, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I believe it's read, comma 1. If not, it will tell you your syntax is bad, like it just did. So I'll go.
It's got built-in help too, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah. It and it lets you know your errors, which is always good. So that gives you a watch point, and I'm also going to set a breakpoint at the same address. So breakpoint's just BP at 4000. And remember, all these numbers are hex, so you got to wrap your head around that if you're going to start programming assembly. So now we have a watch point, and we have a breakpoint. And it tells you that they both are set. So now if I come into here, yeah, let's see what I got on this file.
Now, did this already inject the binary file into the memory of the CoCo when you did it, or did it?
No, it does not. It does not put it in memory. I don't know of any way to do that with a color computer. You can do that with Apple's by using an auto run sort of file, but I don't know any way. If anybody does, go ahead.
I think I know we're not talking about that emulator, but I've heard the guys talking about how XROR you can do that. You can actually just load the binary straight into the emulator and execute it without having to put it on a disk image first.
Well, you know, I never tried.
You can load it directly. You can load it directly with a Control-L.
Yeah, that's on XROR, but that's okay. I was just curious if this was injecting, because I was trying to like disassemble your batch file, and it looks like you're telling it to create, you're telling it to read an assembly file, output to a bin file, and then the next line looks like it's then loading up MAME, but you're also basically injecting that bin file into a disk image before you load MAME. Is that what you did?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, with the image tool program, yeah.
With the image tool program, okay. So
now, I don't know, I haven't tried yet, now you bring that up, that's an interesting thought. I don't know if you can put a bin, like a .bin file into MessUI in the software tab that we looked at earlier. Double-click that and have it automatically push it into memory. I haven't tried that. That's something that'd be interesting to see.
Okay. I don't want to derail this too much further.
No, I'm with you. So, but, so if we go in and let's just load up one of these files. Oop. So now you can see stopped at watch point 1, reading byte from 4000 at D006. So D006 is up here. So it's telling me that when the computer executed that command in that memory spot, it was trying to get information from 4000 and it stopped.
And that's in the disk ROM, so that's part of the disk read.
Yep.
Team.
So as you can see, everything's pretty much halted. So what I'll do is I'll go with, I think I want to show here. Yeah. Let's go with F5.
This is kind of like stepping through the watch
yeah,
points
there's a bunch of
Well,
stepping
now
options. If you click on the debug menu, you can see you can step like single step. You can go to the next IRQ. You can
there's a
step
couple
in all
different
kinds
options.
of things. So
Most of the ones I find most useful are obviously straight up run if you just want to see what it's going to do, and obviously stepping into it. It doesn't really do. I didn't find too much use for the step over. Maybe it's just with my code at this point, but it doesn't seem like that does a whole lot to me different than just stepping into. But in any case, yeah, you are right, Curtis. There's a bunch of different options for that.
if I remember,
Curtis is always right.
Or something like that. Like it runs a whole subroutine without doing every single line or something like that. I think that's what it does.
Subroutine and then come right back. So,
Okay.
You don't have to go through the entire routine, especially if it's in a loop, hitting F11.
Gotcha. Yeah, I tried doing that when I've been in loops, and it seemed like it wasn't giving me what I was expecting. So maybe I'm just not.
I think it's more subroutines, like if you do JSR or BSR or something like that. I think that's what it'll say. Okay, I'll skip debugging the whole.
Got you. Okay. So we're back in. Let me get back in here so I can type. We're going to execute this, and you'll see it should stop us again at 4000, which it did.
And what makes it stop? Is it the watch point or the break point that makes it stop?
The break point. You can see stopped at break point number 1, so it tells you break point stopped it. So the first one was a watch point. When it tried to read from the byte that I specified, it stopped it. Now it's saying, hey, you put a breakpoint at number 1 because I'm trying to execute line, not just looking at line memory location 4000. I'm trying to actually execute memory location 4000. So that's kind of the difference between a watch point and a breakpoint. A watch point kind of watches for changes in a specific memory location versus a breakpoint is a specific
execution location.
Correct, a specific position in your program that's being executed. So,
and what's the purpose of doing this? Is this like forcing you to pause your program at a certain point to?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a context because I don't write in assembly. I'm trying to understand a context when this is beneficial.
Breakpoint would be good for, let's say you're running through your assembly program. You're like, yeah, I know all this works up to 5,000 hex, but somewhere around 5,000 hex, I'm getting an issue. So you breakpoint it at 5,000 hex, and you can start single stepping through. Watch your registers change and your flags change, and make sure that you're getting the response you're expecting for some part of a program that's potentially not working correctly. So that's kind of the use of breakpoints.
Okay.
And then watch points are useful for, like, if say you're going to have, especially if you're like trying to transcode something, you're like, man, I wonder when it's writing to this memory, or I wonder, what's happening when it writes this memory. So you give it a watch point so that when it hits that memory, it will tell you where it's at in its program. You can say, okay, this part of the program's talking to this piece of memory, why? And you can kind of start digging into why it's accessing that specific spot. So that's my.
I should also mention too that you can have multiple ones of each. Like if you have several parts of your program, you're not sure where the program's going snaky on you. You can set watch points and break points to multiple locations, and it'll stop as soon as it hits any one of them, and it'll tell you which one of the ones you specified. So if you set up 3, and the second one triggers it, it'll say you hit breakpoint 2.
Yep. And if you, for whatever reason, you forget, you're like, man, I wonder, maybe you have a bunch of breakpoints. There is a breakpoint window you can bring up. It will tell you what your breakpoints are that are currently in play, pretty much.
Okay.
But as you can see, the thing I really want to show, which is kind of cool to watch, I want to do with a different program, though. So let me see where I put that. Let me get out of here. Well, that's what color looks like if you let it run. This is a very simple program. It's just a demonstration. It's basically P mode 4, and what it does is it starts with color set 1, which is your black and green, changes the whole color, goes to your color set 2, which is your buff and black, and basically it's just cycling through those. Now, bear in mind that I have a 64K's worth of delay between each screen, or otherwise you won't even be able to see it do anything. It's just a blur. It's part of the demonstration I want to show as far as the speed difference, but I can show that better with a different program. So let me go there. Let's get out of that and that.
Are you going to try to tell us that assembly is faster than BASIC?
Oh, yeah. Well,
heresy.
Technically, BASIC is the same speed. The problem is BASIC has to do all of its decoding of your lines and everything. Yeah, I mean, it's doing everything at the same speed. It's just taking all that extra time trying to figure out what it needs to do first. So.
In BASIC, the hard part is all done when it runs. In Assembler, all the hard part's done up front before it runs.
Yeah, very good. That's a very good way of putting it. Yes. I mean, what I want to. Okay, I want to go into this guy, which is the one I set up for this, I believe. Although I need a debugger.
Minus debug.
This is how you start the debugger. If anybody wants to do it from the
MessUI, you can do it.
You go to debug, activate integrated debugger, check that box, and it will start up every time. And I do mean every time. So if you don't want it, you got to turn it back off. So as you'll see now, my debug window will pop up, and over here she is. So now, let me get this disk loaded up. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I know what the program's called, so I should just be able to pull it right up.
I'll just make a quick mention while you're doing that too. There's disassembly windows. You can have multiple ones if you want to see different chunks of your code at the same time. You can make separate windows for each. There's memory dumps. You can do the same thing. Like if you have some variables in one part and maybe the screen, you can at the screen memory location, you can set up different ones there to see if it's starting to write to those. Even without watch points, you can kind of monitor what things are going on.
And that's kind of what I'm going to show very basic of here in a little bit, just to show you how that works. But so we got load M letters. And what this program does, basically, it takes the text screen, which is from 400 hex to 5FF hex, and it basically encodes this entire screen into that piece of memory. And I know somebody out there telling me, no, Jay, I don't believe you. Well, I'm going to show you that it's true. So if we go into here, you believe me?
I believe you.
Heresy, heresy.
It's only if David says something we don't believe it. So,
that would okay. I'm good.
I want to believe.
Hey now, hold on there, Curtis. How dare you?
So if you look, if I get my cursor to work here, so here's 5FF and 400 hex. So all this space is basically each one of these bytes is encoding a certain space on this memory.
Sure.
Yeah. You can see the hex value on the left, and you can see the ASCII output on the right, which matches the screen.
And if you look at the screen, obviously I'd have to adjust the size of this to make it look exactly the same with the columns, but you get the general idea.
Yep.
So what the program's going to do is it's going to come in here at 400, and it's going to put the ASCII letter for A in every spot down to FFF, then B, C, D, E, F, all the way up through Z. And the intention of this program was just to show people the difference in the speed between memory, between BASIC doing it and actually doing it in assembler. And you'll see it's dramatically different as anybody who's ever done assembly. I was kind of pretty wowed by how much faster it really was when I first started playing with it. But what I want to do is I'm going to execute this code. I got to give myself a breakpoint first so I don't lose my code.
What's really interesting about assembler is you look at something in BASIC like print and you give it a string of characters. You go, okay, that looks pretty nice and neat, and then you look at assembler and it's like, what? I got all these characters and they have this big loop that runs and goes over and over and over, but boy, it runs a lot faster even though it looks a lot bigger.
It looks a lot more complicated, but yeah, you got to think about all the tokenization that's going on underneath and all the conversion, and then it's finally at some point figuring out what assembly to push out. So yeah, it is a pretty interesting process when you think about what BASIC is really doing, but. So we'll execute this, and it should stop us at 4,000. And it did. And then what we can see is, I'm going to single step through this, which I believe if I hit enter will do that. So our first command here is going to push some registers on the stack. Don't think I have to do that necessarily, but I was doing that, just testing something. But anyways, you'll push that on. It loads the X. Index register with 0, which is going to be the counter for the memory location. It loads A with 41 hex, which is an A character in ASCII in hex. It stores what's in X. I'm sorry, stores in A what's in X at 400 plus the offset, whatever X happens to be at 0 right now. Comes down, does a compare to see if we've gotten as far as we want to get yet in the memory. And it says, hey, if you do get there, we're going to move on. If not, then it has us go back. Does an increment of the X, because obviously you got to have the increment or you won't get the movement across the screen like you would expect. And then it has it jump that BEQ that we had up in 400E doesn't take you on. Then it pushes you back up to the top and continues a loop and just continues to place. So if you look now at 400 on my memory window over here, you'll see it says 41. Now the video hasn't updated yet because it's the way the debugger works. But in fact, you can see in memory it has updated. So if I continue...
That's based on your beam X, beam Y, by the way, because that's simulating the raster gun going across your monitor. And you wouldn't actually see it until the 60 hertz refresh when it actually goes to redraw. So that's why you're not seeing it.
I think if I went in here and told it, I don't want to do it just because I'm showing code, but I think if I told it to run to the next is it next V blank?
Yeah, V blank.
I think I would get that, but I don't want to do that right now just because of what I'm demonstrating. But you can see as I'm stepping through here, it's continuing to go through this loop. And if you watch, my memory is filling up with 41s as you go across to 400.
Yeah,
and it's just cycling its way through, making everything an A, which is really cool to me to watch it do it in memory just because of what I understand what the assembly is doing. But I know everybody else is probably like, all right, what does that really do? So what it really does, if I close out the debugger and watch, because it is really quick, that's what it does.
It's already on Z. Yeah, we couldn't even see it go through the alphabet.
So let me clear the screen here, and I'll run it again just so everybody can see how fast that really is. Oop, I gotta tell it to continue on here. That's pretty much it. Like what, a second, maybe second and a half.
Yeah.
So now if you look
at the screen sequentially through every letter of the alphabet up to Z.
That's right. Yeah. So now if you look in here, now I have another program that I can load up, also called Letters, but it's a basic program. Assuming that I have it on this disk, which I hope I do.
Now, are you still using? Are you poking at this point, and not using the basic print command?
Well, I'm going to show you right now. So I am using a poke. So my understanding is that's the fastest way to do memory transfers in BASIC. If that's not correct, hex. Somebody correct me. Using hex and pokes, right? Is that the fastest way to go about? Because using a print would be slower, right?
Right. You can also
print would be faster if you made a whole bunch of A's as one print statement. But that's kind of cheating compared to, because you're trying to compare apples to apples here.
Right.
And I think you could even speed it up a little bit by changing the 65 decimal to the 41 and H41 too. I think basically
hex loops are a little bit faster. Down enough, and it's disgusting.
Well, let's try that and see if I don't think it's going to significantly change what we got here, but what the heck? That is assuming I can figure out what key is on this keyboard for that. So this would be end hex. Oh boy, this is going to get ugly, guys. So I don't have my other
figuring out where the.
Never mind. We're going to leave it the way it is. The demonstration will still be valid.
The and sign still is Shift 6 on the CoCo.
Shift 6.
Shift 6.
I went back. Yeah. I'm not gonna bloody that up anymore.
Yeah,
all right. So if we run this, we'll see the dramatic difference in speed. Essentially doing the same thing between what assembly was doing.
That's one screen. That's another screen. Yeah, we can see it letter by letter, whereas before it was already on Z by the time we were on ice.
Yeah. So that was just a demonstration I came up with showing, kind of demonstrating the same thing, but with the speed difference you're going to see based on, not having to interpret everything. So, so I think that was pretty much as I wanted to cover today, unless you guys have any questions or comments beyond that.
I would mention, like we were talking about the fact that your original machine language run is running so fast that you don't even see it updating the screen because it's waiting for the refresh. On the debug window, there's that beam Y, beam X, and that shows where your raster gun is. X is across on the current line, and Y is how many lines down. So you could actually single step through it and actually figure out, okay, it's on line 91, 92, 93, and once it gets to the bottom, then you can actually see when the refresh is going to happen. So you can actually kind of figure out, how fast is my routine working? How many refreshes of the screen have I actually done before the screen itself actually gets updated every 1/60th of a second?
Gotcha. That's yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
In your assembly file, you can actually count it. If you you listed to the DOS prompt. You listed your file to the DOS prompt.
Right.
If you actually used a greater than sign and piped that into a file, like a list file, and you put an option 6809 option CD into the start of your assembly code, you could get the cycle counts for, and you could say, okay, how many iterations am I doing? How many cycles am I taking?
I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Nick. I think if
Simon.
Oh, Simon. Sorry, sounded like Nick.
They're all foreigners. They all
that If you, I can barely do southern dialect, let alone other ones. So.
I want to confuse you, eh?
Oh, Daddy, behave yourself.
Let me. I thought that the output from this does give us that. Let me see if I'm wrong about that or not. But I thought that it would do that. So let me try this quick and see if it gives me what I'm thinking or not. Dot. Oop, not dot.
Yeah, you're listing to the screen, okay?
Right, but doesn't
you're listing straight to the screen. You can actually list that to a file if you wanted to look at it later.
Yep. I follow what you say. Yeah, using the caret for redirecting the output. Yep, yeah, I got you. Yep.
Okay.
Excellent.
In the beginning of your assembly file, right before the org, put in OPT 6809.
Hang on a second. Let me get this guy open.
Just OPT 6809, which defaults to the 6809 processor, and then underneath it, an OPT CD, which is cycle counts.
Okay.
So if you have a look at that, if you assemble that, you'll see cycle counts in square parentheses. You should do.
So while you're doing that, I do have a dumb question that I think I know the answer to.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, there you go. That's what you're talking about. I just didn't assemble for me. I didn't realize it. So this is actual cycle counts of each instruction.
Those are cycle counts, yes. So you can actually count your way out of it and say, okay, how many cycles have I got in this loop?
Gotcha. Right? Yep. Excellent.
You've got 57 cycles per scan line.
Gotcha. Cool.
Is there much benefit to using this debugger if you're writing stuff in BASIC?
Nah, not really.
Not unless you're trying to debug BASIC.
Yeah. or if you're really interested in how it's changing your video memory, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's as much as I can think of.
If you're going to start using fancier BASIC commands like varptar or something, which is to access the variables directly, you can kind of use that with watch points and stuff and kind of see how the basic variables, your little 5-byte floating point numbers and stuff are changing. But generally, no. Tron and Troff in BASIC are basically the equivalent of the BASIC debugger.
Okay. Trace on, trace off, like Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
Very cool. No, that's great. I am still not quite fully assembly aware yet, but it's interesting stuff, and it's great that we have a few other people here on the call who are much more assembly aware that can also create some value-added stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, that was part of the reason I wanted to do it in the first place, was just to get, I knew that there'd be people on the call that are much more assembly able than I, so I could learn a couple things well. So.
The debugger is a hugely useful tool if you're doing assembly or even trying to just figure out how the language underneath works, whether you're in a Nitrous 9 or you're in BASIC. If you want to see what the basic ROM's doing when it's executing certain commands, you can actually trace through and single step through that.
Yep.
So obviously what some of the stuff we're seeing here, because we're doing an emulator, we're seeing information outside of the computer. So this is one of the benefits of using modern technology to do a vintage project. If this was being done on actual CoCo hardware, what visibility do you have, and what debugging capabilities do you have on traditional old school assembly and stuff like that?
Well, if you're talking about just the CoCo itself, you have basically none. as far as assembly goes. Now, if you get, I mean, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's really pretty much the way it is. There's none. But my understanding, like if you get and use the EDTA-SM cartridge, you get some debugging, you get registers and that sort of thing, but it's nowhere near anything like you're going to get with using a cross development sort of option like this.
Actually, you can get a lot out of ZBug, a hell of a lot.
Oh, yeah, that's true. ZBug, yeah, right. Yep.
Which is
you can set up things like software interrupts, so you can actually have it step through and pause and dump registers and memory locations yourself.
You can set breakpoints. You can look at memory. You can look at ASCII. You can look at bytes. You can look at words. You can look at mnemonics. You can change memory.
When you say you can look at it, though, how is it visually represented on the screen? It's probably nowhere near as elegant as what we're looking here in MAME, though, right?
No, it's visually represented as single bytes. If you fire up ZBug in, say, XRAW or something, if you've got XRAW and you've got a ZBug or an editor assembly cartridge, you can fire it up in 2 seconds, and we can have a look at that. You can see bytes, words, you can see potential strings of memory, you can look at registers, you can single step, you can set breakpoints, you can yank breakpoints.
It was probably the best thing that was available, obviously, at the time. But I mean, as far as what Steve was saying, to his point, I think the display of it is obviously...
it's clunky. It's clunky compared to what we have today.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking 2 steps ahead here, but one of the discussions we had a little while ago was this CoCoTALK cartridge that lets you connect a second monitor to your CoCo.
WordPack, you mean? Or?
WordPack or something like that, yeah, where you had the second composite monochrome output to your CoCo.
Yeah, you could technically, if you have a little driver for ZBug or ZBug, or if you wrote your own, have it dump stuff out to that screen while your main CoCo display is doing whatever you're doing.
Like a real-time debugging of while things are running.
Yeah, I do that in OS9 all the time because I tell it to demem, which is a command to dump memory from another process, and have it just dump it out to another window, so I can just switch windows and see what it's doing.
Interesting. No, that's cool. It's I mean, even though I don't speak the language of assembly, I do see the value of being able to visualize what you're trying to do as a development and troubleshooting tool.
And there's quirky little things you can do depending on what type of debugging you're doing. Like I know one that Nick and I have both used on the CoCo 3 stuff is if we're trying to track an IRQ routine, because that's notoriously hard. Because all of a sudden the code just jumps off in the middle of nowhere under hardware control because a horizontal sync interrupt or something happened.
Sorry, can I interject for a second? Now you mentioned that, I was thinking about how would an IRQ in a program fire without some kind of external stimulus? Doesn't it have to have something that's going to stimulate that IRQ to make it fire?
Yes, yeah. You've got 2 sources, or potentially, it depends if it's CoCo 2 or CoCo 3. CoCo 2, potentially 2 sources you can program, which is the horizontal and the vertical IRQ. The cartridge IRQ is wired to FIRQ, so is the RS-232.
Okay. But I'm saying they would all have to be on real hardware. I guess what I'm getting at is, can you simulate that in MAME to have it fire an IRQ in MAME?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And a software interrupt kind of works the same. So even on a real CoCo, if you wanted to try it, you could, if you want to fake a hardware interrupt, you can just have a software interrupt that jumps to the same routine. And you can just inject it somewhere if you want to see what would happen if an IRQ fired off at this particular time.
Actually, about software interrupts, Curtis, when we're on that point, is there no difference between SWI, SWI 1, 2, and 3?
Basically, the only thing that's really different is that they have different vectors. Obviously, they go to 3 different locations. And then also the priority order between them is different.
What about register pushes?
They're all full interrupts. They're not fast RQs.
Right, so it's potentially just the same as a normal RQ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding with the SWIs is that I guess they had intentions of the SWI 1 was meant for the OS, SWI 2 was meant for an application level, and then 3 was meant for a user level, but I'm not sure that they ever really get used.
A lot of the debuggers actually use the software IRQs to do their single stepping, because basically it'll take whatever code you're about to run, copy to a little temporary buffer of 10 bytes, and then add an SWI software interrupt after that,
Yeah, that's
So
what.
basically, just run an instruction at a time, and then immediately trigger off and run off, and print to the screen or whatever your debugger's doing.
Yeah, that's what ZBug does.
Yeah, and OS9 itself, all of its system calls are SWI2 calls.
Okay.
So it's used extensively there. But there's other little tricks too. I mean, like I was mentioning earlier, like Nick and I both use this where on a CoCo 3, if you want to try to track something down and see if your code's hitting certain spots, but you don't want to dump out every byte or have a second screen going or something, or your screen's used up and you can't display anything, is that you just do things like, change the horizontal border color. And you change it, it's going to be blue if it got this far in the code, and it's going to turn green if it got this far, and it's going to turn red if it's over here. And then if your program is hanging, you can go, okay, it went to green, and now it isn't changing colors anymore. So I know my code's stuck somewhere in this chunk.
I use the same mechanism for timing, for seeing, okay, how long does a routine actually take?
Yeah, you change your border color, you can watch it going up and down. Yeah, Nick does that too.
Looking at how long the routine takes.
You can even do that to a limited extent on the CoCo 1 and 2. Like if you have a game you're writing and it's in, the white-black color set of P-Mode 4, you can have your code change it to a green, change it to P-Mode 3 or something at certain spots and figure out, okay, it's got this far.
Yeah.
Not this far.
Yeah, I like anything that can help you visually know what's going on in the middle of something,
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that changing the border color for timing that Simon's mentioned, I mean, Nick uses that extensively. Simon uses it extensively. I used to use it extensively too, especially with GraphDriv. And it's really handy because you can see exactly, like, it's almost like getting the cycle counts in a rather more coarse way, but you're actually seeing, this routine's taking this much time out of a vertical sync of a 60th of a second, and this one's taking much less or whatever. So you can use it to optimize your routine, see whether it's faster.
Doesn't that mess up your timing in and of itself by having that additional code in there? Or do you remove it and then retime everything? Or how does that process go?
Well, you use it for relative timing. Like if I say, I'm trying to figure out which of these two versions of this routine would be better or faster, but I don't want to sit there and figure out the cycle counts. You can just do both and then just have it draw the border, changing the color. And if it goes further down, that was slower. And if it stays back up, it's faster.
Gotcha.
Potentially what you do is if you say have buff and black color set at the beginning of the vertical sync, you change it to a green black. Run your routine, and as soon as your routine's done, you change it back to the buff black. So it's measuring it kind of like up and down from the top of the screen. You can see, okay, it's taking this much time.
Right.
Yeah, you just put a video up, I think, demonstrating that, didn't you?
Yes, I did on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. This was a good little presentation.
Very nice.
Indeed, it was.
It was so good, it kept David Ladd's mouth shut the entire time. So.
Shut up, Steve. Shut up. You can take that and go to the bank.
Unfortunately, it didn't work on Steve.
I don't know why I put up with you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, I'm gonna switch screens now. If you want to turn off your screen sharing, if you're done, Jay.
Yep, I will do that.
I'm gonna switch over now and look at a couple other things, and we'll move the conversation to a few other topics, because I did notice that there is an update to the Tandy Assembly website. So I thought it would be nice to show some of that. So let me get over here, get to my computer. Can you guys see me okay? Mm-hmm. You see the screen okay?
Yeah.
All right, so here's the latest Tandy Assembly website. And when you click on exhibitors now, they have now shown who some of the exhibitors who are going to be at Tandy Assembly now. So they've got me in here. Mike Rowan is going to be here. Richard Lorbieski is going to be here. He's been on several of our CoCo Talks. Peter and Alex Satinsky. So I think that's Peter Satinsky's son, Peter from the TRS-80 Trash Talkers podcast. Cloud9 is going to be here. This was the question, I think, Grant, are you in the call still?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I think Grant had asked a question last week. Does anybody know if Cloud9 is going to be here? It was revealed both on the podcast, and it's now revealed here on the website that Cloud9 will be here. And so for those of you not aware, Cloud9 is possibly the only company, so to speak, that's selling hardware. Of course, you have, Ed Snyder and John Strong and stuff, but this is Mark Marlette and Sandy Weimer. And if you've seen any of our videos from CoCoFest, you know that not only does Cloud9 have a lot of new hardware you can buy, like flash cartridges and VGA adapters and AT keyboard adapters, but they also sell like cartridges and books and older stuff too.
And the 512K upgrade.
And upgrades and sockets and stuff. And Mark will actually do hardware upgrades at the event. So what I'm hoping to do, because I have this one CoCo 3 that right now I haven't had a chance to get firing up. If I can't get it to fire up on my own, I'll bring it to Mark and see if he can't breathe life into my CoCo. So that'll be kind of cool. Peter Bartlett and Malcolm Ramey from Colorado, classic TRS-80s with modern upgrades. That should be Randy Kindig of the Floppy Days podcast, and also Antic, I think, too.
Does that say Lebanon? Is that Lebanon?
Lebanon.
Yeah, Lebanon, Indiana. I've driven through.
Indiana. I was going to say, because I live real close to Lebanon, Pennsylvania. I'm like, wow, I didn't know anybody. But no, it's India. Okay.
Okay, so he's going to show Tandy portable computers through the year. So probably starting on like the pocket computer, going up to some of the laptop-esque type devices. And then Retro Innovations, who is Jim Brain. So these are some exhibitors that have signed up already. That's pretty good. Our speaker lineup is about the same right now. Scott Adams, Venture International, Don French, the TRS-80 story, Lance Miklas. We have special panels and events 7 p.m. So this is a new lineup for the Saturday. So they're talking about a 5 to 7 p.m. break, and at 7 p.m. special panels and events. So more to come. But that's kind of cool that Tandy Assembly is coming along right now. We mentioned earlier that there's some things going on Facebook. I think one of the things I want to look for real quick here too is this is Bruce Moore now showing us possibly one of the first videos that we'll see of the game he's working on right now, Forest of Doom. And I know, Simon, you've been helping him out a little bit with this, right?
He stepped away for a bit.
Okay. So we're seeing one of the first video clips of Forest of Doom, which is a project that Bruce has been working on. This project was first announced officially at CoCoFest this year. So this is a text adventure game 30 years in the making right now. So that's kind of cool. There's me spamming CoCoTALK on Facebook. Cocoa Pi running great. So Alexa Tilbrook has got a Cocoa Pi up and running. This is one of the Ron Klein projects. And so, yeah, I think I'm really wanting to get me a Cocoa Pi going here pretty soon. So that's pretty cool.
Haven't you guys, can I jump in here?
Sure, of course.
Haven't you guys, is it Chris Hawks, I believe? Remember he had put out, I don't know, say sometime around CoCoFest about and I guess it was a pass-through adapter for the keyboard, so you could actually put a Pi inside of a CoCo. Did that get anywhere? I haven't really heard much. I was wondering if anybody knew where that's at.
Yeah, that was just recently officially announced that he does have this. It's a CoCo. It takes the Mylar connection. It passes through. It'll let you plug it into a Raspberry Pi, and then it goes back. And so so it's basically kind of like a CoCo 3 to USB adapter.
Right,
you can plug it into a Raspberry Pi and put that inside your CoCo 3 case.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really thinking about working on one of those. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. So what else is going on in Facebook this week? Okay, so we got somebody who says, I just got something from my parents' home. He's got a 64K Tandy Color computer too. That's kind of cool. I thought this demonstration here is pretty cool that Bill Pierce put on their group, showing an OS 9 maze program that not only did it automatically generate the maze, but then it solved the maze too, and it did it very quickly. So
that's an old program that's been around for decades.
Now, is that in Basic 09 or is that assembly?
No, that was in C.
That was in C. Okay. So the fact that this thing could generate this maze and then solve the maze, and you can kind of watch it trace its steps and retrace its steps. It's very cool just watching the computer think and see how quickly that computer can think. It's really neat watching it get stuck, and then so because it doesn't have is because it's not like us with a pair of eyes that can see the whole maze. It's got to try each turn until it reaches a dead end and come back. But it's kind of cool, like computer learning, almost like a little bit like what Boise is doing.
It would be if you were in the maze, because you don't have the bird's eye view.
Yeah, if you're in the maze, you don't have that bird's eye view, right? So it's a first-person view. Very true.
Bill and I used to use this as a screensaver at work if we weren't working on anything. We just switch to this window and let it run for a bit while we're running printers or whatever.
Yeah, it's really cool looking. I was quite impressed with that. Somebody put up a thing on Facebook here about how there's a video of Nirvana playing at a Radio Shack in the 80s. Footage surfaces of Nirvana playing Radio Shack in 1988. How cool would that have been? Nobody knew who Nirvana was back then. It's like, who is that crazy guy with the long hair, right? So here's Mateo's computer that Mark sent to him, so that's kind of cool. I'm not sure what... I think this is the SCART cable that Bruce Moore got. And I know this is something that Richard was working on. Richard took Barry Nelson's design for the SCART cable and created some type of RGB to SCART to HDMI thing where you can plug a CoCo 3 into a modern television. So I think that's Bruce getting his in the mail. So his little bundle of joy arrived. Here's the demo that you were just talking about that Simon created, showing how you can change the screen. The kind of the colors on the screen right now, we can see the green line here kind of going down.
Yeah, and that means it's running slower. So basically, if the triangle's really small and doesn't have much to draw and calculate, it's not putting too much green because it's going really quick. And the bigger it's getting and the more complicated, then the more CPU time it's taking as it goes down.
So this is a way to visualize your code and how many cycles it's taking.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. It's also just cool that you can mix the colors on screen, which is something that, if you don't understand hardware and assembly, this is almost like sorcery. Like, oh my God, how are we doing this? Because
you can mix the text modes, multiple graphics modes, all kinds of things on the screen at once.
Right. Yeah. So that's a really cool.
I do understand these things, and it's like sorcery.
Rick Adams chimes in.
Actually, if you've ever seen Musica 2, it uses that technique because it has a little text on the top and then, graphics on the top. I can't remember which order it is, but it basically splits the screen half in graphics, half in text.
You can actually do that across the screen as well if you want to.
Yeah, but that's a bit more timing intense.
It's a bit harder, yes, but you can.
Yeah, and this question came up, which I thought was interesting because this is our Color Computer Deluxe joystick, right? And well, they were made by a company called Kraft, K-R-A-F-T. And Kraft made this joystick for IBM PCs, IBM PC Juniors. They made them for the CoCo and for the Tandy 1000. And so this actual joystick design was used on a lot of different systems. It's familiar to us, but it is, it was actually a third-party kind of design. And I just thought that was interesting that we can see this same package with many different faceplates on it,
Yeah. This isn't the same Kraft that makes Kraft dinner, is it?
Kraft macaroni and cheese? It could be.
Yeah. $3, the joystick.
All right. Now, I think there are some differences in how the X and Y coordinates are transmitted out on the different versions. Like on the CoCo, I've heard them talk about how it's a voltage change potometer, and on other ones, it's a different way to send out the information. So I think the electrical signaling may be different on the PC version versus the CoCo version, but the actual physical stick and the plastic box it comes in are all the same,
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. So what else is going on this week with everybody in the call that you guys want to talk about? Let me see while we're thinking about that. What's going on in the mailing list? Was there anything hot or just interesting going on in the mailing list this week? Because some of these topics I don't even understand. So how to compile MAME on a Win32 system came up. Pac-Man 1.01. That was pretty cool. Like the day after we demoed Pac-Man, he had already released an update. Nick, are you here?
Yeah.
You want to speak to what some of the stuff that had to be changed or just a minor tweak that had to happen with the Pac-Man?
Yeah, well, the only thing I suggested to Glenn was that I noticed he had the well-known Color Computer 3 Sparklies problem, where you see the little colored dots appearing over the screen. So I was just wondering, is he aware of the sparklies? So I sent him an email saying, what it is and how to get around it. And he did it pretty well straight away, and it worked. And hence you saw version 1.01 the day after. There was a few other things I suggested as well, some aspects of the game where it flickered a little bit and all that. But he was feeling a bit burnt out from the whole Pac-Man thing. He said, look, I'll leave that for another time. But he fixed the sparklies quite easily, and it makes the overall look of the game much better and even more professional than what it is.
Yeah, because the emulators don't actually do the sparklies, so if you're testing solely on emulators, you'll never see it.
Okay. That's right.
You answered my
and
question.
That's what I figured. I figured he'd never seen it because he was using a emulator.
So that's one downside to an emulator, is not seeing some anomaly that might only be present on real hardware.
Yeah.
Hard to emulate anomalies in some cases, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And Grant, I know earlier in when you chimed in, you mentioned you got a CoCo 3.
Yes, I finally got it all set up, and it's up and running now.
You got your CoCo 3 yet?
So are you planning on getting it upgraded at the Tandy Assembly show there?
Yeah, actually, that's what I was going to ask you guys, because Steve and I were talking about this. I'm definitely going to do the 512, but what other upgrades should I do? I mean, should I do the protector and the keyboard updates, or what do you guys think about that?
If you're going to get a 6 through 9, I would definitely get the protector because it'll help protect the chip. And the 6 through 9, if I remember correctly, is a little bit more susceptible to static shocks than the 6809. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, so definitely do the chip upgrade and the protector, correct? And the 512, of course.
Yeah.
I would think so, because the 6309 is like HMOS instead of CMOS. Another level of electronics.
Okay.
And get yourself a CoCo SDC.
Yes, if you don't already have one.
Yes, I already have one. I love it.
That's awesome. Well, we're definitely glad to see some CoCos staying out of landfills and making their way around to the community.
Especially CoCo, they're rare as hen's teeth for a lot of people, unfortunately, or really overpriced.
And I got a question for Curtis here as well, because you're not going to like this, Steve. It's an OS 9 question.
Hey, Nick, hang up now.
Hang on, I'll just mute.
I'll take out my headphones.
No, it's a very simple question. I noticed when I was messing around with some of the CoCo 3 games, how do I start some of the OS 9 games like Space Quest and the Sierra games?
Okay, the Sierra games, first of all, require 512K, so if you don't have that, you can't.
Oh, darn.
You have to wait till Tandy Assembly. Most of them have instructions built in. I mean, you type DOS and originally to boot the disk image, and it'll boot into OS 9. And then the Sierra games usually use Sierra, and you can type -R if you have an RGB monitor to default to RGB. Otherwise, it defaults to composite.
Okay, great.
Doesn't it prompt you?
I think it does tell you on screen on the Sierra games.
Yeah.
And then some games auto execute it. The reason they didn't do that with the Sierra ones is because there's two options you could do. You can do no multitasking with the -M, which skips a lot of the sound because it actually shuts IRQs off. Or the RGB, override from composite. They didn't build in a prompt like, say, Rescue and Fractals or Chronos Rift did.
Okay, great. So, yeah, when I get the 512, then I will definitely give that a try.
Yeah, all the Sierra color adventure games all require 512.
Cool. Okay, Steve, that was the only question I had about OS 9, so you can unmute now.
So
I'm just surprised Nick knew something about firing up an OS 9 game. I was impressed.
Yeah, but for how long?
Apparently, he's dabbled with it before.
Now,
he's been dabbling.
Ooh.
So Jay gave us an insight to how he wants to develop, which is using LW tools and what is that called? Cross development, where you're using.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Now you brought that up, I was wondering, like, do you guys, what does everybody, I know Nick, he tends to be, I guess, like an actual hardware programmer guy, and you're that way also, Curtis?
I'm just wondering, I'm used to my workflow for 30 years, so it's just, I have done some using the cross assembler tools and stuff too, but to be honest, it's too fast. Like when I'm doing OS 9 development, I usually have a window with my source code, and I have a window that does the assembly, and I have another window for the actual running the tests. So while I'm assembling something, I'll start going through the next chunk of the code and figuring out what I'm going to do next after I finish testing it. So my workflow is I kind of like multitask that way while it's running. And if it just goes blank, then it just doesn't flow as smoothly for me. It does take me a lot longer than it would using a cross assembler, but it's just what I got used to. And Nick's just old fashioned.
Yeah. It sounds better than just dumb.
Oh. In the mud. That's just wrong.
Shots fired.
No. Yeah, I think he's got it wrong. I was talking about myself.
And can't teach an old dog new tricks, I think is what he's trying to say.
That's it.
Drencore. Okay, David, Orange Fire Simon's in the chat, and he wants to see a Drencore face reveal. So, well, you see a picture of him up there. He's the guy with the sunglasses. But yeah.
And lack of hair.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Wow.
I shouldn't have said that out loud.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Shots fired. What's happening is there's so much brain activity going on in that head of his it just burns it off. Yeah, us Neanderthals are a little bit more shaggy.
Watch it out! Watch out, Steve.
Hey, I gave you a compliment, David.
I even helped.
Yeah. So have you?
Actually, I'm not used to compliments. So.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a point.
Have you further hacked the boundaries of floppy tracks and sectors in the virtual realm?
No, I've been kind of busy on the realm. Otherwise, in CoCo stuff, there's nothing else going on.
Right.
Yeah, it's up to this evil world called Minecraft, and
yeah. Well, it's interesting that that's my other obsession besides old stuff, but. We have a bunch of people from the color computer community that also join. Hey, Glenn Hewlett is here. Sockmaster says, I can't learn new tricks either. That's why I stick to ancient computers. But yeah, so...
No, he just invents the new tricks.
Yeah, David joined us in Minecraft like a year ago. We got Fedor. Fedor joined us, who's Simon's neighbor, and Simon Jonassen's neighbor out there in Denmark. So Fedor joined us with some of his kids. We recently got Bruce Moore's son, Jacob, to join us, and then Mark just joined us. So we've got like a half a dozen CoCo people now playing Minecraft together. So
the other thing that's crazy about Minecraft, too, that because I play it probably just like most people do, but I know when my kid first showed me the game, I'm like, this game has no legs. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to, what do you do in this thing? And I still play it to this day.
Yeah, it's like Seinfeld. It's a game about nothing.
It is, yeah.
I'm just waiting for the CoCo port.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah,
yeah, that'd be neat.
Legos, whatever you want to do.
Right. So that's cool stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Tandy Assembly. That's our mid-year get-together. What else? Those of you who have some projects, some coals in the fire, anything you want to share with us on project updates?
Nick?
No.
You want to hear from me?
Yeah, anybody. Yeah.
I've been very busy this week, so I haven't got anything to announce.
Okay.
Same
You're busy on non-CoCo stuff. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
So Rick,
while I was on my vacation, I added the last sort of gameplay element to Bomb Threat, which was the random bombs showing up. So I added that, while in some hotel out in the middle of nowhere. But then since I've got back from vacation, I haven't done anything other than one attempt to write the scoring sound. And I am not good at sound routines. So I've made like about 3 or 4 attempts to write that scoring routine to sound like the original game sounded, and I've been failing so far. So I think I'm going to try one more time, and then I'm going to give up. So we'll see how that goes.
Are you still planning on crowdsourcing that? See if anybody else can come up with something similar?
Yeah, I'm sure that somebody can. So yeah, I may need to do that. When I say that I'm going to give up, I mean that I'm going to give up and do that.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Not giving up completely, just turning
right.
it over. Yeah.
It's like I'll say, look, I can't do this. So, and a lot of times back in the day, when I needed a sound routine, I had friends that would do them for me. Like if you look at the source of Shanghai, a lot of the sound routines are like, okay, this one was donated by this person or that person. One of them I wrote myself, and I was rather proud of that. So, but that's usually how that went. So I remember that. So we have the gameplay video, and so you can listen to that. You can go, okay, when it's doing the scoring and it's adding up the score, it's got this doo 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 sound, which is it's a fixed volume, and it starts at a high pitch and goes to a low pitch. So that's pretty easy, except not for me. So, so it's just a matter of, I've got a sound in there now, which sounds quite reasonable, but it's like the chime sound from Shanghai, because I just stole it out of there. But I'd kind of like for it to sound like it originally sounded, because, this is sort of an attempt to get the game back that I lost. So in the gameplay video, you can hear what it sounds like, and then, we'll have somebody like Simon or somebody go, well, I know exactly how to do that, and then 15 minutes later they'll be done and they'll give it to me, whereas I've made about 4 or 5 tries and it's like, well, no, that didn't work.
Well, let everybody know either on Facebook or in the list or both. If your last attempt has been done and you're still not happy with it, and then we'll see who else can come up with something.
Right. I think that I think that people would get a kick out of doing that.
Oh yeah,
it's almost like a contest, community contest. Who can you make this sound?
And no cheating in saying you have to use a Game Master card to do it.
Well, I was going to say, if anything else, we could probably just play back the video and digitize the sound from the video and convert that to a WAV file and throw that into it.
Well, that would be sad.
It would work, but it'd be sad.
Push comes to shove. I'll just let you know what my next 2 video projects are in my mind, and just technical difficulties and work schedule have not made them possible this week. But I have recorded 199 color computer gameplay goodness videos. So I was thinking, what do I want to do for video number 200? Now, I'm still going to do like a kind of a montage of my favorite moments, but I was figured for video 200, Glenn Hewlett's Pac-Man would be a great new CoCo game to show, because right now it's kind of the newest game out for the CoCo. So I was figuring I would make that video 200. Now, another thing that came up recently too on the Facebook group was that I think it's the same guy, Mateo, who got the CoCo from Mark. He also won Retro Challenge, right? He won a Retro Challenge. Yes. And the quote unquote prize that he got was a copy of one of my first color computer DVDs. And
is that a booby prize? I was going to ask you.
Yeah, booby prize. Yeah, he came in last place, right? So, but on the cover of that DVD is the artwork for Bedlam, right? And then there was a handful of people talking about Bedlam. Oh, I remember this and I remember that. And so it started a little thread. So I thought it'd be cool to do a Bedlam video and maybe even make it a slightly crowdsourced ones where maybe I can do a screen share and get a few of us on together, and we'll try to solve one of the random possibilities of getting out of Bedlam together and make that a video.
Yeah, I remember. I loved that game when I was a kid. Knight mentioned it. I played that all the time.
Right, and the
we could use the MAME debugger to cheat too.
No, we'll do that. But that is. Oh, Glenn just chimed in and says, "I'm sick of Pac-Man." If I eat one more dot, I'm gonna puke. Well, but yeah, so it's kind of random, right? So the way you solve the game each time is a little bit random, which is interesting because most of your text adventure games are pretty linear. And I think there's a similarity there to like the interbank incident. And that's something I've also been wanting to do a video on. And part of the challenge of doing that, because if you wanted to do it properly, is I would have to hook up a multi-pack and a speech sound cart and whole 9 yards. But now that we can emulate the speech sound pack, now it's probably time to maybe do an episodic series of videos playing through the interbank incident. And then one of the guys who has volunteered to want to share a lot of tips and tricks too is Richard Lorbieski, who's been on a bunch of our calls. He's very familiar and very passionate of that game, and he's like basically said, I've looked at all the walkthroughs and I've seen all the problems with them, and I could tell you what to do and this, that, and this. So it might be kind of neat to have somebody else kind of co-pilot and share some tips and tricks on that particular game, because that's another pretty interesting adventure game. And by the way, runs in OS 9.
Yep. I would make one suggestion if you're going to do interbank. If you got the original docs, it actually tells you how to install it on a hard drive.
Yeah.
So use a virtual hard drive because it runs much faster and much smoother.
Okay. Well, I'll probably lean on you for some assistance in doing that because I've never done a real or virtual hard drive before. But yeah, I actually have physical copies. I've got 2 physical copies of the game and the manuals. So that'll be interesting.
That goes for the Sierra games too, by the way. They run much better off hard drives too, or hard drive image on the CoCo STC.
Mm-hmm. Sockmaster says Pac-Man is going to rehab for a bit. So those are some of my things that are going to be in the near future, as far as a couple of projects around the corner. Between my computer taking a crap and 4th of July and work schedules, I didn't have time to work on anything this week. So, well, that's good to hear that you got some more progress, Mr. Adams. We're definitely looking forward to seeing more of Bomb Threat, and definitely looking forward to the official release when that happens.
Yes.
Basically, I need people to play it to go, does this game suck or is it okay?
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there anything different from the last copy that I saw? Because I'll be happy to play that some more. I enjoyed it when the preview you sent me a little while ago.
Yeah, I need to update it to have it include now the random bombs that show up during the gameplay, and then other than making the scoring sound be the real original scoring sound, there's nothing more to do.
Okay. So have you given any thought to how you want to release it yet now too? Is it going to be just digital, or are you going to do disk images, physical packaging, anything like that?
I really don't know. I'll probably do some, do I want to do cartridges? Well, kinda. It's kind of a lot of work. I don't know if I really don't know. There might be a limited number of cartridges made. And then once those get out, maybe people will ask for more, and maybe we'll put together some more. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I definitely count me in for a cartridge if you go that route.
Of course. I think cartridge number 1 goes to you.
I'm honored. I was just thinking about this too with your laptop. You know how your laptop died and you have the hard drive you had to pull out from there?
Yep.
This is almost like your floppies you had with the original source code for Shanghai. This is the source code for Bomb Threat has been developed on that old laptop, or maybe it was a different machine. But that's the closest thing you have now to an original floppy,
Right. Well, actually now, I do all my development now on my Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
But for going on the road during my vacation, I transferred it from the Raspberry Pi to my laptop, and then I worked on it on the laptop, and then brought the laptop home. And once I got home from my vacation, then I killed it. So yeah.
Let me switch gears for 1 second here, because Glenn Hewlett just mentioned that he put a new video in Facebook. I'm going to show this video right now. Let me know if you guys can see it here. And I don't know if there's any sound to it right now, but we're going to replay this. We're going to let it start over. We're going to refresh. So here we go. He's getting ready to load something.
keyboard got him.
Yeah. Now, the fact that it just loaded a screen like that just looks like a Williams arcade game to me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's what first happens when you boot these things up.
It's part of the self-test.
Yeah. And he says here, this is something I've been looking seriously into this week, just for a bit of fun. Can anybody recognize it? And so, Williams, right? And so Terry says, that looks to me like several Williams games power on like that. Curtis Boyle chimed in. This looks like part of the Williams self-test. Yes, so
there's a little Robotron, Defender, Joust.
Yeah, so there's a little teaser of what we might see for a future transcode project. I know it's been discussed by many people that part of this is some of the heavy lifting's done because you don't have to translate the CPU language, but you still have to now emulate graphics and sounds that are going to still eat up CPU cycles. So that's cool. Absolutely. That's cool. Very cool. Did anybody get a chance to do your homework assignment and finish listening to the CoCo Crew podcast?
I did.
I liked it. I found it to be surprisingly short. It was only about 2 hours and 15 minutes, so I felt like I got robbed.
Yeah, I went to sleep before midnight when I heard it, so I was kind of like at a loss what to do at that point. So.
Sockmaster says that looks like TV, like the snow pattern on the TV. I saw somewhere that somebody put like a meme up on Facebook or something where it was a picture of like a CRT TV like at a pawn shop, and it says, this thing here only displays the images of the ghosts that are trapped inside it, or something like that. Was the little sticker they stuck on the front
That's
of it.
That's the ant colony simulation. Also known as the cosmic background radiation.
Yeah, right. That's what we should be listening to if we want to hear E.T., right? So, yeah. Cool stuff. So, anything else we want to talk about this week, or have we beat this show to death?
I think we're good for now. It was a good talk on the MessUI and our MAME UI and also the debugger.
Good point of things to avoid or things to do.
Indeed.
We got to harass David some more, so that's keeping our tradition going.
Yeah.
Curtis.
Nobody's completely immune from the ribbing here, so it's all in good fun. And with the exception of David and Curtis, I have nothing but respect for everybody else here in this call. So. Good stuff. Well, let me just show you guys one more thing. I'll show you a couple clips of this. So I haven't really officially announced this, but I think it was leaked one time. So when I was at CoCo Fest, I ended up recording a bunch of bumpers from a lot of you, and many of you are actually in this call right now too. So I just added up all my bumpers, and I had like 2 or 3 from last year, and this year I got a bunch. So I'm up to 30 bumpers of people just saying, hey, this is so-and-so, and you're watching the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh. So I've kind of put them all together, and I just thought I'd maybe roll a couple of them here so we can see some members of the community say hi. And if you recognize any of these people or
at the 2016 CoCo Fest, and you're watching the Original Gamer Stevie Show.
Hey, this is Bruce Moore, author of Force of Doom, and you're watching the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
Hello, my name is Grant Leighty, and I watch the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
Hello, this is David Ladd, and you're watching Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
Hi, this is Rick Adams, and I'm the author of Temple of Ram and Shanghai, and you are watching Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
Hi, I'm Mark Barlett with Sandy Weimer. We're from Cloud9, and you're watching the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
Hey, I'm John Strong, the author of Bomb Squad, and you're watching the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
Hits just keep coming, folks. But yeah, I got about 30 of those now, so I can put those in future productions. So that's kind of cool. It's something I've always wanted to do, and I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that likes to bother people. So especially at my first fest, I felt very reluctant to ask anybody if they wanted to do that. So I only got a few. But this time around, I figured, I know a few more people and stuff, so I got a lot more bumpers. So that's kind of cool. It's a fun little thing for me to have.
I have to say, I've never done a bumper for you. I should actually do that the next show.
Yeah.
Or I think we talked about it this last year and it's never happened.
Completely forgot. Yeah. And
we got too busy jamming.
And for some of us on Skype and stuff too, if you guys ever want to call me, just we do a one-on-one Skype call and we can record a little bumper that way too. Be happy to do that. But yeah, I got Glenn. You got Glenn Hewlett. I got a bumper from him. I got a bumper from who's the guy who did Flooded? Evan Wright. A bunch of people, right? So it was kind of cool. Rick Adams. We got a bunch from John Strong. Got a couple from Alan Huffman. So yeah, that was kind of a fun little thing to take all those videos and put them all together now. And didn't realize how many I have. 30 bumpers is pretty good, So what did Glenn say here? It says, if I don't have to translate 6809 source code, what should it be called? It's not a transcode. I guess it's an emulation? Or is that in this case here, is it just a port? That's a good question. If he's not transcoding the source code, what do you call it?
Yeah, it almost sounds like it'd be more of what you would think of as like a direct port. You know what I mean? Like it would be the actual source code, but
right. You're not changing the logic of it. You're just changing the input outputs usually, the graphics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then possibly emulation to some extent because you have to emulate the sound hardware and graphics hardware that don't really exist.
Right. If you're doing something like a 6502, like an Apple II, which has no video and audio support versus a Commodore 64 that does, then you would have to either emulate the sound and audio, or you'd have to strip it out of the Commodore version going to the Apple and come up with something else.
Right. Cool.
But the actual game code would be pretty much the same because you got all the same registers. And
yeah.
So maybe I'll just close with a question on what suggestions does anybody have on something for us to talk about next week. Maybe we'll plant a few seeds on something that we can discuss next week.
I think it's time to do a beginner's tutorial for OS 9.
We just lost Rick Adams. And Nick Marentes is hanging up, and the internet's crashing all over the world right now. So Armageddon and the zombie apocalypse are upon us. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all.
Well, we haven't really done OS 9, so yeah, it's about time.
A beginner's tutorial on OS 9. Okay.
Yeah, just I don't know. Do we want to start with stock or nitrous? Jump straight to nitrous, or?
I'd say we start with stock at least first.
Well,
so you bought the original discs. Here's what you do.
Is there any benefit to understanding OS 9 before you go to Nitros 9?
I don't think so.
That's what I'm saying. It'd almost be worth just going right to Nitros, right? I would think. But
plus, Nitros is fairly available and easy to get too, and there's tons of builds, etc. So
and better fixes.
Yeah, well, it's faster, it's optimized, bug fixed, blah blah blah. So.
Okay, well, that's if we can pull it off. Like, I'm not sure how we're going to do this. Is it going to be a screen share, or is somebody else going to host it? Do I need to run it on my computer and share it out that way? We'll figure out some of the logistics, and if we can make it happen this week coming up, that would be great. If not, we'll get it going as soon as possible for sure. It's something I've always had an interest in learning a little bit more about and experiencing as well. So I've seen Curtis show me some things that he's screen shared with me, and some of the stuff he's done has been really impressive. The ability to multitask and switch between programs and all kinds of stuff. It is definitely interesting. So that's a great suggestion, Grant.
Yeah, I hope I don't bore you or scare everybody away.
Yeah,
just Nick.
Lesson 1 could be how to build a boot disk.
Lesson 2, where to pick up the appropriate hammer.
Lesson 3, where to seek out counseling afterwards.
The rage quit.
The rage quit button. So, okay, so Glenn Hewlett says he likes the term conversion. When it comes to taking like a Williams arcade game to the CoCo, he's going to call it a conversion instead of a transcode. That's a good word. Conversion.
Yeah, that's a tough one to call too, because I mean, if you bought Zaxxon for the CoCo, they called that a conversion back in the day, and that's not the same thing because you're not, using the original code. You're just converting it to run.
Well, so what would you call Zaxxon? As an officially licensed port of the arcade?
Yeah, I guess so. Back then, I think they called it a conversion, but yeah, I think you're right.
Because it's literally just rewritten to look and play like the thing, but it's not based on any of the original source code. It's new source code that's recreating the experience of the program.
Yeah.
But it did sound like Steve Bjork had a lot of insight to the original game from Sega. He did mention that he had some type of relationship and exposure to it. So it wasn't like a complete outsider's abstract interpretation. There's, he probably had better than a lot of other people porting things, some insider's knowledge on it, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of interesting things he was talking about too, like how the Japanese people wanted it to originally be fighting against a dragon instead of a spaceship, and the American was all about outer space, things like that.
Well, didn't Super Zaxxon they actually put the dragon back in?
Yeah, they ended up putting yeah, so it's just kind of interesting how some of the cultural differences. One of the things that I remember too is like when the Sega Genesis game console first came out, its pack-in game was a game called Altered Beast, which was not a huge hit in the States. It was just an arcade fighting game based on Greek mythology. But when the the new CEO of Sega US decided to pack in Sonic the Hedgehog with Sega, it ended up selling a lot more units because there was a built-in game that was more US friendly, the different cultural things about video games. Cool stuff. So yeah, definitely OS 9. We are long overdue for an OS 9 show, maybe this week. And in addition to, or possibly instead of, if we can't get to that next week, what other things are you guys wanting to talk about or hear about in an upcoming CoCoTALK?
I guess part of it depends on what happens over the next week. Like if you get another basic video out, we might discuss a little bit of that. Or
right, yeah. The next one I'm going to do is the play command, which maybe I'll get to this weekend as well.
Hey, maybe we should talk to Hugo DeFort and see how he's doing on his his CoCo 3 game.
Yeah, it'd be great if we can get him on. Let's reach out to him, definitely. Cool. All right, well, let's wrap up this week's CoCoTALK, and definitely want to thank everybody who's been here from the beginning of the call and everybody who's been watching us in the live chat. Let me go back and look at the chat real quick and say hi to everybody who's been in the chat, just so I don't forget those who have been with us. So Nicole was here earlier, Mark Overholser was here, Alan Zeister was here, Alexander Wallace from Mexico was here, John Mark Mobley. Is it Mobley or Mobley? Is it Mobley? Okay, Curtis and Grant were here. Nick Marentes came by the chat. Richard Lorbieski was here and said he had to go. Richard Cavell was here. Sock Masters in the chat. Simon Jonassen was also in the chat. Wayne Campbell stopped by the chat. Orange Fire Simon stopped by. Orange Fire Simon also lives in Denmark, same area as Fedor and Simon Jonassen. Glenn Hewlett's in the chat. Sock Masters in the chat. All right, so I believe we've said hi to everybody in the chat. That's good. Good times. And on the call, who we have left on the call right now is Curtis and Jay, David Ladd, Mark Overholser, Bill Noble, Nick Marentes, and Grant Leighty. Thanks, guys, for being here. Another great week. We managed to, basically ad-lib another week.
Just like the previous 15.
Yes, like the previous 15 weeks. Just tiptoeing and tap dancing our way through a 2 to 4 hour show. Excellent.
It's a group meeting every week.
You broke up on me for a second. What's like what now?
It's like a user group meeting every week. Somebody drops by and talks about something, and
Yeah, it's an online user group meeting. That's a good analogy there. Cool. All right, guys. Well, we're signing off. Thank you for watching CoCoTALK. Thank you, everybody who was in the call. Thank you, everybody who watched us on the internets. And if you're watching us later on, not live, thank you for watching us later on. Until then, CoCo forever. Have you got your CoCo 3 yet?
Yes.
I know Grant has.
Indeed.
Yes. Several.
And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Later all.